Hello and welcome to Benno and Hamflett in Your House, a podcast reviewing WWE's iconic New Generation B shows in order from the bust back to the boot. I'm Michael Hamflett.
I'm Benno. I'm Michael. It's 1997. But it's October 1997. More to the point, we're going into November 1997. Did anything happen around then, mate? I don't know. Anything that we've been excited to record about, to chat about, never been covered in wrestling history. Anything, maybe something that maybe you weren't too excited to cover, and neither was I, if I'm honest. But maybe more excited now I've done that homework. I don't know. Anything to mind?
A couple of things, I suppose. Look, I will say this, I'll jump ahead to something I'm very excited about right now because, I might have made it clear in prior episodes of Benno and Hamflett that I wasn't exactly relishing discussion of what we'll get onto today. We should, a bit of housekeeping within the housekeeping here, by the way. This is our first ever 2-part housekeeping. What we're going to do, as always, is bridge the gap between In Your Houses. We're going to be going from In Your House by Blood to In Your House to Generation X. However, as Benno has alluded to, there is quite a significant event, the Survivor Series. This time last year, there was a lot going on in the Fed, and it was a big old chunky housekeeping. If you remember, it was Steve Austin running riot, Jim Ross inventing the Attitude Era. There was a lot to fill the time between the two in Your Houses in October and December. But this is different gravy. It's Montreal. It's November. And there's so much to Bret and Shawn, and then Shawn coming out of the Survivor Series and what he's got going on for DX, that we thought we'd pack all of this into one housekeeping. We'd preview the rest of In Your House DX on the next one, and then the episode after that will be In Your House to Generation X. Have I covered everything off there about why we're doing it this way?
Yeah, I think so. And I think like we said behind the scenes, if there was ever a couple of months in, WWF history that needed a double bubble housekeeping, needed us to do the two, it's probably this. We have, again, to take people behind the scenes, we have knocked back and forth, potential, you'll know by now, potential titles for this particular episode, one of which was Montreal for fuck's sake, or Montreal again. But it felt right, didn't it? We've obviously got a lot of, and some other, we've got to talk that really famous Bret and Shawn match later on that I'm sure people will be forward to listen to us talk about as well. But we just had to split it. And I think it's right. It gives, the other stuff that's going on, and there is a lot of other stuff going on, leading to the next pay-per-view a little bit of time to breathe as well. But I think that's a fair place to draw the line, mate. Montreal and everything but fucking Montreal, because I reckon by the end of these 2 hours, we might be a little bit sick of talking about it. But hopefully people aren't sick of listening to it by now. I always go on record to saying it is the worst month in Grapple Patreon history was the month that we covered Montreal. But please stick with us, folks. Honestly, I think we've got a fresh take on it too. I think our exhaustion on the topic is going to add to it as well as all the other things going on around it that I genuinely forgotten we're going to chat about today as well. So I think it really works to be the first part of a bumper doubleheader today.
Yeah, I agree here. I know I've complained about a grumpy teenager, like a grumpy teenager, or even having to do this. But I need the listeners to know, you didn't twist my arm into doing this. Benno didn't screw Hamflett. Hamflett screwed Hamflett. I went into this with my eyes wide open. And I'm not, when we finish recording this, I'm not going to lean over the microphone and spit in your face. It's all right. I feel confident we can,
guaranteed money's changed, mate. Those Acast ads,
It's not, I'm not going to promise a fresh take, because I think the last one of them, sort of scraped out of the internet in 2009 or something. But I do sort of, it did surprise me, I guess, recapping everything, either side of it, that I was able to at least draw some conclusions that might be worth talking about. I will say, before we get started properly here, I've been waiting for this episode of housekeeping, or I guess now these episodes of housekeeping, since we very first started this podcast. And you might recall why. When we started on 1995, you spoke at length and lovingly about how you considered so much of the WWF we started covering as your Fed, your Shawn specifically. Just the idea, I think I remember you mentioning the Sid turn on Shawn Michaels the night after WrestleMania 11, something that was just ingrained in your memory of where you were when you were watching it, all that sort of thing. Well, I've been waiting for this period of time, because there is an episode of Raw we're going to cover as we go along here that was my very first episode of Raw in my own house. At long last, my dad was not required to pester his mates at the factory to stick a tape in for their colleague's idiot son to watch his stupid wrestling. TV pay-per-views, weekend catch-ups. Basically, my dad just borrowing and stealing tapes from like all of his colleagues all those years. Me collecting the Colosseums from the car boot sale. You know, you're just that never-ending quest for all of the content that then later on, years from now, would exist in YouTube form or on the network or whatever. And there's a Raw coming up, and we got to the segment that we're going to talk about on this one, and I felt that like wave of emotion wash over me when I pictured myself suddenly in my teenage bedroom, like Friday nights here, and I can watch Raw and like the opening credits and going into the warehouse for the first time in my own bedroom. And then to add to that, as I think I've told you before, maybe off mic, I don't know if I've told the story on air, but my house experienced a digital revolution over the course of 4 days because I got home from school on a Wednesday and there was the surprise. We were getting Skyfade. My folks hadn't even told me it was happening. So that was like mind blowing. It was like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And if the Sky Engineer got done in time, it'd be time for me to watch Shotgun. So this was just like enormous. But then that was Wednesday. And then the Saturday, my sister at the time was going out with a lad who was into IT, which was quite a cool industry to be in 1997. He built his like very first PC, and it had always really impressed me that he's like, hang on, you built that, you know? And he was getting a new one. So he gave me his old PC and he hooked the forum line into the wall in a different way and was like, oh, by the way, here's the internet. See you later. And
like, it made some weird noises. Whatever dial-up sound was.
Did those dial-up noises. I've got, well, what do I do? Right, hang on. So I'll watch Raw on Friday and then I'll go on Yahoo and search for wrestlers' real names. So this was simultaneously my like sort of open to the fed in my own home and the primitive experiences of the late 90s IWC, like all over the course of a 4-day period. Everything changed. So to jump ahead, there's that, like, you see a couple of signs, don't you, the Survivor Series saying like, why wait, Bret, just leave now, all that kind of stuff. I wasn't finding the right sites, but I was finding the whispers. There was I wish I could remember them, and I wish I could go in the Wayback Machine and find the links, but I've got memories of like what would now be a whatculture.com, an aggregator, sort of, well, here's what the Observer says, here's what Keller says, whatever, just gossip sharing. And I was like, well, I don't know what Austin Owen 316 broke your neck at AOL. Like, I don't know what their sources are, but they seem to think that Bret's going to WCW. What's this about? So something was whirring then, obviously not in the way that I could have known what was going to happen, but like all the cogs just started turning out of nowhere around this period. And it was incredible for me.
I bet. Like, and we always say about 1997, that's the year where all of those things kind of open up for me. I'm still in the stages at this point, as I mentioned on the previous Housekeeping, of going to the local library to jump on the internet. Like, I literally had to get on my bike, drive down to Littleton Library, get in, and that's the year the lady was always suspicious of why I was getting on the computer. If I could jump on just to go to stonecoldstinger.com or my favorite website. But I was, we're going to talk about it when we get to the big story later on. But like, I found all that out. I wish I could have known you back then, Michael. I always say it to Matty as well. Like, I wish I'd have known you, because I could have given you the in, mate. The in was Paramount Text. It was Mailbox, which has gotten a few shout outs today before. Like, that's where I read basically all the same scoops. Same thing, somebody was either ringing Finn Martin's hotline, who was copying it all from Meltzer, or ringing Meltzer's hotline and putting it all up on there. So like, in a very different way, tuned in. There's me, same thing, in my bedroom with, the dodgy cable that goes from the skybox downstairs to the skybox upstairs, where you both have to watch the same channel as watching downstairs, but you feel like proper adults because you're like 13 and you're actually watch Sky in your own bedroom. Like, that's
my
like
folks
my
weren't
setup
daft.
compared to yours.
Like, they weren't daft because they had it wired to their bedroom telly as well. So there was absolutely no way that I was going to put Men in Motors on the downstairs box on the off chance that it was being watched upstairs, and I got rumbled.
Always getting watched, especially after midnight on Sky Sports. But we've mentioned that one before. That was a good trick.
Oh man. I mean, let's dive in, shall we? There is a lot to talk about here. So we'll pick up where we left off after. Actually, I will just say this: we're going to pick up right where we left off on the Raw after Hell in a Cell, and we are recording this one unusually for us in the way we normally have to fit these in after one has gone out. So thank you everybody for your really nice feedback on the Hell in a Cell review. It was one we loved recording. It was one we were super excited to get to. And I think we were really chuffed with it after the fact, and it's been really cool. I think it's opened up the conversation on this match again, isn't it? And that's never a bad thing. Like, it's been fantastic to see all that, like, through the Grapple Discord, and like our like got an email address out for stuff, and a couple of people have messaged watching the match back for the first time in years and spotting new stuff. So Spotify comments, like we're getting things in there, which like
I'm
you
banned
forget
from,
exists
but you can see.
sometimes. Then you...
I'm
Well,
black
no.
from it still by Spotify, the gods at Spotify.
But yeah, it was a joy to go back through that one, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Like, even to the point, I'll shout him out, my brother Peter. Like, he was literally completely unrelated. I don't think he'd been up to date on his Benno and Hamflett, and he was like, "Oh, but what you just, just another little baby. So, congratulations to him and Rita." But he was like using his downtime to find out, to watch old wrestling. And little Francesca's just sat there while he's got apparently Shawn Michaels versus the Undertaker from Hell in a Cell on. And of course, as a salesman, Hamflett, as a podcaster, I did have to throw in. Well, actually, we've just done a little podcast about that. You should check it out. And I think he was probably looking at it going, fuck off, it's 2 hours long. And I did say to him, as should be on the Benno and Hamflett page by now, little YouTube video it will be up, just covering that part of it. So even if you've got a short attention span or you're jumping in, for whatever reason, where have you been? I don't know. You can go back and you can listen to those 20 minutes again. Or if you really enjoyed it, like we did record it, and like I say, like I agree with you, like 100%. Couldn't wait for people to hear that one. I would, pat ourselves on the back sometimes. I think some of our best work. You can go back, you can relive it, you can listen to it again and visualize it in your head, just like I do.
And congratulations, by the way, to another baby in the Benno extended universe. But I would recommend watching that match, not just because it's one of the all-time greatest Fed matches, but because if you listen to Shawn Michaels on the 6th of October, you will hear nothing but a pack of lies from the man himself about what went down the night before. DX, as they are soon to be named, Shawn Michaels, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and China are introduced by Michael Cole to kick off the 6th of October episode of Raw. And my word, do they kick this one off. Shawn Michaels has got stitches in his head from the horrendous blade job the night before. He does mention before he gets going that he wants to welcome formally Michael Cole to the WWF from the Click. If you recall, the shower scene was from one night earlier on the pre-show, and it's an absolutely brutal arse bleeder of a wedgie. Like, they've got him up in the air, like by the pants, they're lifting him up. Shawn Michaels is saying, "Oh, that's going to leave a mark." And they won't even let him leave the ring to retain his dignity. Triple H is doing the full school bully business where he's got him in the headlock. He's giving him a nuggie every time he won't. He's not even like interviewing him at this point. Shawn's got the microphone, but nonetheless, Triple H just won't let him out of shot. Like, I think I said this to you when we last recorded about that picture on Reddit of like Shawn Michaels and Michael Cole. They're now just mates that go on fishing trips. Like, Triple H and Michael Cole are these like douchebag mates on Unreal. And there they are, stood together, where one guy's basically fighting for camera time to have his spot, and the other guy's wondering why he left war reporting behind for this. It's so mad, isn't it?
Honest to God, like it's one of those as well. Triple H is not in a position to be able to bully someone here. Like, feels his voice hasn't even broke in the little bits he gets to talk in this segment, and the other ones that he's the one with the arm around poor Michael Cole. Who I was wondering that because there's been segments like this, hasn't there, where Michael Cole didn't know it was coming. I wonder if he knew this particular one was coming. He did look happy, and Jim Ross didn't sound happy on the commentary. But like, yeah, I agree with Jim Ross. If I was him, I'd have walked out by then.
Yeah. As I say, Michael Cole's not getting any interview in, but Shawn's got the microphone all the same. He calls himself the best sports entertainer in the world today, and last night was the proof. He's the one that's here, and The Undertaker isn't. He took down the Phenom. He's propelled Shawn Michaels' status from superstar to the one and only icon in the World Wrestling Federation. He mentions with that rasp and anger in his voice, he said that word has been thrown around loosely in this business. But he says he's not one of those fossils. Shawn Michaels, oh God, I love this. I'm slapping my already. Is the icon that can still go. He mocks Ric Flair's strut at this point because it's a long forgotten thing, that considering that they were his busy mate when he came back to the company. But like, Shawn and Triple H were two of the most visible guys to mock Ric Flair being a fossil and being ancient, being a dinosaur and all that sort of thing. But now, I think I know this one. As a Benno and Hamflett collected favourite, we get to what was at this point Triple H's best ever promo. And all that he's doing is playing cheerleader for Shawn Michaels. He takes the microphone and he says, "Who is the man?" And Shawn Michaels goes, "Me." "Who is the showstopper?" "Me." "Who is the main event?" "Me." And then because they're still workshopping these things. And what is the greatest force in wrestling today? And Shawn goes, the Click. And I think he knows what's coming, which is why he's queued all up. And he says, anyway, in case people don't believe how good I was last night, roll the footage. And I did actually, the video I found, for whatever reason, obviously it must be scary, I chopped this from the original feed, but everybody remembers this. They look up to the screen, Michael Cole finally scurries out to the ring, and they're waiting for the footage to play on the screen from the Hell in a Cell, but it's the wrong footage, Benno. It's the curtain call. It's that grainy camera footage that we've all seen a million times now from those two fans. It's the first time, certainly in WWE, that we've ever seen the footage. And to be quite honest, like, it was only shared, again, primitive internet, primitive video sharing. It was going to be hard to come by this stuff way back then. Pretty shocking and transgressive to air this of the four, members of the Click without X-Pac, who was injured at the time, having their hug on May 19th, 1996 in Madison Square Garden. Triple H and Shawn Michaels have obviously hijacked the truck. Vince gets shown on camera at this point looking absolutely furious that, DX have gotten up to no good. And then to that point, Shawn Michaels gets right in his face and just like goes for the throat over this. He's like, oh no, are we exposing the business, Vin, man? Is your dad rolling over in his grave? Is your family tradition all over because me and my friends made an ass out here? Don't worry, Vin, man. You were an ass long before I made one out of you. And he's just heckling him and going from Vince has nowhere to go. Jim Ross looks disgusted at the desk. And then from there, Triple H finally gets his go. He gets in his face. Vince tries to bollock Triple H, and both of them just do the little wiggle finger. They just mock him for it. Vince is desperately trying to get Raw to go to a commercial break. And we'll break this segment up here. But as we come back from the break, we see that Shawn Michaels is still on that ringside area. And for all we know, over the course of the commercial break, he has just spent the entire thing talking about how brilliant they all are, how he's the showstopper, how he's the best, that proper in-arena house show heat, because none of it is dialed down. This audience just despises this grim, gross, increasingly maniacal lunatic Shawn Michaels, this power mad, this crazed man who is simultaneously a bit of a psychopath and also like a high school bully. He's like the worst case version of everything. But the heat for this is unbelievable.
Like we've been saying it, and it's because he's got his dickhead mate out there with him, and I'm not talking about Ravishing Rick. I think that just brings out this side in Shawn. But this is proper. There's things to criticize for those out there, maybe in certain podcasts who think we don't ever criticize Shawn. Should he be selling a little bit more? Yep. Maybe. But I think the real life Shawn Michaels, which is what makes all of this work, being a dickhead, wants to go out there and jog around and wants to brag about, the match last night, but in a kayfabe kind of way, and put over the fact that he went over. And it's that's what carries this. I always say that about Shawn Michaels. He's one of those guys, again, if this was an EWR game, if the TW actually with the better stats, he'd get a higher rating for charisma than he would for mic skills. It's not really the content he's saying. The content's pretty good. The content's funny for me and you, and it annoys the right people and some of the wrong people, so that's good too. But it's just more the way he carries himself here, isn't it? It's just the center of arrogance and just everything about him here that pours out of his skin and makes him feel like the most, for all of his catchphrases there, literally the person you need to see outside of Steve Austin in WWF right now. And yeah, as you mentioned there, Bret coming out next does feel a little bit a few years behind that, but it feels very, very perfect for this era of Raw.
I think that's it, isn't it? We're going to, on this episode alone, we're going to talk so much about how when things get too real, wrestling's its worst rather than its best. But the old Steve Austin idiom about your real life self turned up to 11, when he says that, what he means is he's just kind of a brash, sweary Texan who makes himself slightly bigger and TV ready. The real Shawn Michaels turned up to 11 is this guy. He's insufferable. He's what you're witnessing here is what every single person has put on his CV from this particular period. The angry young man, the guy that was impossible to be around. You actually get to feel that for yourself, don't you? He puts you in that locker room just by standing in that ring and going on the way he does. So does Triple H. He's at ringside with Vince, and he's about to go off on his own shoot tirade at Vince, but he's cut off now by the Hart Foundation music. DX heckle them as they come out. They're talking over the entrance theme, very un-WWF. And again, that's the sort of thing that feels like it's going to come up a lot in this particular edition of Housekeeping. And then Shawn, as Bret's walking onto the stage, he says, God, Vince, you thought you were burying yourself before. Bringing that idiot out was even worse. So, like, Bret's not even started yet, and Shawn's already, like, cutting him off at the knees.
Yeah.
Bret's out on the stage. He just, like, he's already sounds like withering and, like, annoyed by this, like, boy toy. And then there's some, like, USA chants, and he kind of, like, half-arsely says, oh, yeah, USA, USA. These are your American heroes, are they? But a bit like what we said last month, like, the story has ran out of juice. It doesn't feel real anymore because Shawn Michaels has sort of reframed what real is in this context, and the Patriot and Vader, and it just doesn't cut it anymore. So Bret again tries to get going. He says, Shawn, you have no respect for anybody. And Shawn makes that point doubly clearer by spitting at him from, his side of the ropes in the ring. Shawn and Hunter are in the ring, Bret on the Titantron. Bret says, Shawn Michaels, boy toy. And before he can even, like, finish his thought, Shawn's reply of, yes, Bret Hart, just cuts the Hitman to ribbons. Like, the manner in which he is able to just, I don't know, reduce the status of Bret the Hitman Hart. They're 7 or 8 years apart, but in terms of TV age, they're always talked about in the same category. They're the guys. Yeah. Hogan leaves, Warrior leaves, Savage is retired effectively. These are the two guys that are coming up at the same time. It never really matters that Bret is a few years older than Shawn, but Shawn has realized for the first time that he's so much more current than Bret, and it's little things like that kind of highlight that, isn't it? It's like he just holds all the power in terms of how to make this feel. He knows what Raw's War is supposed to be. Bret is still kind of on WWF Monday Night Raw and trying to, like, fit himself into Raw's War, whereas Shawn is ingrained in the source of it all. So Bret finally gets going. He says, you're a disgrace to professional wrestling. Shawn's just laughing. Bret says he's paid his dues. Bret calls him scum. There's one camera cut here where it just cuts to Shawn asleep on Triple H's shoulder as Bret continues to talk. That, again, like, they couldn't have timed this any better, but again, it just kills Bret's momentum. The more Bret talks, the more Triple H and Shawn do the shocked faces. Again, all of this stuff is right out the video packages, but they're kind of slapping the, like Kevin when he's put the shaving foam on in Home Alone, and they're kind of, and like Shawn, even you catch Shawn on camera instructing Triple H to do it again on the off chance that the camera's missed it the first time, and it doesn't lose anything by that because they've got the shot forever then, haven't they? Right. We're gonna have to get into this. Shawn said, Shawn Michaels, you're nothing but a degenerate. That matters very soon. But completely stumbo-bumbos over what he's about to say next, but we have to talk about this. He says, I know what the HHH stands for in HBK. I'm going to go verbatim here where I can, at least. He goes, you're nothing but a homo. That guy in the green is a homo, referring to Triple H, who cuts in and goes, I'm no queer. Bret says, you may have barebacked your way to pay-per-view main event after pay-per-view main event, but the fact that I make more money than all you three guys in the ring, and this here, and he taps the belt over his shoulder, this is what it's all about. And until you have this, I don't care what you say or what you think. You'll never be the showstopper. Shawn's pissing himself laughing at Bret's comment about money, and he's going to get back to that in a big way in a second. Bret does what Bret always does. He always goes one line too far, thinking, I can still land this plane. And he just, like, off the top of his head goes, you're not the first one to beat The Undertaker. You're just a little too late. And it gets nothing in the building. It gets another, like, people just watched Hell in a Cell last night, mate. Like, if you were lucky, they've forgotten your tag match while they're remembering what Shawn did. Like, it doesn't count anymore that he's this world champion, So he goes down, like, a different path. Homophobia, tick. Trying to get your win back, tick. Let's get on to the Click. He says, anyway, speaking of the Click, those two guys you got with you, your other boyfriends, Diesel and Razor, I ran both of those out of town. This is where we get the cut to Shawn. He's asleep on Triple H's shoulder. Bret challenges Triple H to a match that night, saying, Triple H, you're going to face the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. And Shawn cuts in and says, yeah, but do you want him to wrestle you tonight? Like, you can see Bret was confused, so Shawn has to repeat the gag. Bret doesn't get it at first, like, kind of goes to pieces. He's like, oh, God, man. Oh, it feels awkward to even recap this. He says, I want him tonight, Shawn. And then he kind of hears himself saying, well, hang on, if I want Triple H, does that mean I'm scared of Shawn? He says, I don't need to come and take you right now. I've got you in the Survivor Series. And when that day comes, I'm going to kick your scrawny ass. And he just storms off stage. He knows this has gone badly. He just walks off. Like, he even if he was supposed to be there to pull faces for Shawn's last words, he's realizing what's the point, and him and the Hearts just storm off. Shawn says, I've got one thing to say to you. Actually, got two. The first one, suck it. And the second one is, you may have more money, but you not have more money. Shawn Michaels is in this business because this business needs Shawn Michaels. It needs Hunter Hearst Helmsley. It needs China. It needs Ravishing Rick. Bret, you are a zero, my hero. And the only way you get into the main event of the Survivor Series is to wrestle the Heartbreak Kid. And that's a bit like, yeah, Bobby Fish, where's the lie? Shawn's just like, at this point, again, like stewing in his own juices, you know. Ultimately, we'll all rule the WWF until I decide differently. And then it's like, it clicks. He was like, oh, yeah, speaking of my friends down south, do not confuse destruction with expansion. The Clique owns this business. And at the Survivor Series, Shawn Michaels and their Clique will own you. And he actually does the suck it, but he does it with the cross for the first time. Yeah. So all those pieces are coming into place. I've rambled there, and I will let you talk. But like our favourite Shawn Michaels and our other favourite Bret Hart, I'm going to ramble a bit too here because a lot of conflicting thoughts. I only want to speak first because I just, I want to apologise if the language offended you that I was recapping there, because of course it is quite offensive. It hasn't aged well, but I wanted to use the word specifically when sometimes we wouldn't necessarily need to, because Bret Hart went on the record in later interviews and in his book about how he was uncomfortable with the homophobic remarks and he didn't necessarily want to make them. And I don't know, I have to sort of push back on that a little bit. I have to push back on that a little bit, because if there was like one killer line that he tripped over that was like a writer, like Vince Russo was desperate for him to say, because he thought, think of the heat, bro. And then he says that line and he trips over it with this HHH, whatever. Like, you could almost think, I can see there. Not only were you uncomfortable to say it, you couldn't even deliver it. But he chucks in like four of them. It becomes the central point of the thing he's most angry about. He almost, whether he's rattled by Shawn's confidence in the ring or whether he's forgotten his bits again, it's just like, well, if in doubt, I can go down the homophobia route. And the fact that he takes that shortcut, like, I simply can't really sanction that he was just, I didn't want to do it. I didn't see it as a necessary thing. It's like, you might not have seen it as necessary, but when you didn't feel like you had anywhere else to go, that was the first place you went to, and you would do it again, and you would do it again. I want to put over, guess who? Shawn Michaels for being 100 million times the wrestler that Triple H will ever be in every single way. Triple H, that needle-dicked, insecure loser, cutting across Shawn. I'm no queer, pal. Right. Shawn Michaels saying nothing was letting Bret hang himself, but Triple H, one of them, so pathetic. Well, shut up, I'm still the bet. The levels between these two, like, immediately just reveal themselves. Yeah. Like, I feel like every time we review DX at this point, like, Bret was dying out there, and if Triple H had an instinct in his body, he would have just known to just sit back and let it happen. Yeah. And the fact that he cuts across, it's all really gross and grim. But speaking of this from a performance standpoint, he's miles off it. He's absolutely like, Bret could have carved Triple H up if he wanted to. It was just Shawn Michaels he was in the losing battle with.
Yeah, and on the homophobia point, like, I think it'd be easier to say, and it's true. It would be true to say if Bret said it. It's a cultural thing. I don't think it's an individual thing. Basically, it's horrible, and we should condemn the culture for it. But pretty much every heterosexual male in the Western world in the 90s was calling their mates their enemies, those types of words. Like, it's not right, and we should condemn that whole thing and be glad that we all moved away from it and everyone stopped doing it. But, like, I think that would be a better defense than Bret saying that, when I'm pretty sure he was saying the exact same thing in his, like, Calgary Sun column. Like, in fact, I read one today, and I'm pretty sure there was one of those same allusions. I'm pretty sure those allusions are in his book. I'm pretty sure he made those allegations about Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels quite recently. So like that
Yeah.
doesn't really hold any water. But yeah, it's the time, isn't it? In a lot of ways too. And it's weird to see Shawn almost be the progressive one by letting it roll off his back, which obviously is not the intended outcome, but that's what it looks like all these years later.
I don't want to jump ahead as well, because I feel like, I don't know, like maybe this will make a bit more sense the more we've talked about the various segments between the two. But I think there's something very foreshadowing about this segment, in that, like, it's not what's the word I'm looking for? Good. Like, already the level of reality between the two, the level of sort of disdain between the two, within the first time they've come face to face for now selling their match at the Survivor Series. Like, maybe a little bit of this is projecting what you know about the two men and ultimately what would happen at Survivor Series, but it's not strong promotion. Do you know what I mean? It's not like there are very few attempts to put each other over before you bury one another. There are very few attempts to try and find a story. Like, Shawn Michaels can't. We can have a good laugh at him kind of like winning this particular battle, but what he hasn't done is sell a fight very effectively. You know, like, what are you saying if you're saying, well, the only reason you're in the main event is because of me, but that guy's the WWF champion? You are devaluing the WWF title. You would go on to do it in a far more pronounced way in a later segment on this, but this is a sign of things to come. When you watch these segments back to back to back to back, it is, of course, endlessly fascinating, and hopefully the recaps as we go along this will kind of bear that out. But it's not a good pro wrestling feud, not by half. Like, there is too much in the way at this point. Like, there is too much, like, there's too much reality for the fiction to remotely cut through it. It'd be like the night after Brawl Out in 2022, bringing CM Punk out and having him and the Young Bucks try and cut wrestling promos on each other. You wouldn't care. You would want to hear what happened in that locker room. You know, it's It's just
put in about
already this is like dysfunctional to a fault, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's by design too. I think it's very, they're in that mode, aren't they? There are no baby faces, there are no heels. Like, we do shades of grey. And the obvious result of that is you're then taking your two top heels and putting them on a program like this. And on top of that, your two top heels who really don't like each other. And in those moments where they do clash, there's always the opportunity for magic, but there's also opportunity for a car crash. Like, the only bit I push back on is I actually think this early bit of the feud and some of the segments we're all to get to are probably the more compelling parts of it. Once it gets a bit more boots and trunks and it gets a little less personal and it gets more about, the third person who's involved here as well, I don't think it's as interesting, but I don't know if it's interesting for good reasons either. But it all, to me, fundamentally, it's by design. It's like, no, we do shades of grey, but it makes for quite miserable TV, really, doesn't it? Watching two people you're supposed to hate be horrible to each other.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, that knowing what they were trying to illustrate, that's a good take on why this was actually what they wanted rather than what they didn't. But like, I just think back to how, when they say about singers that you can hear when they're smiling when they sing. I kind of feel like, as I'm reading some of this, as I was watching and as I was like reading it and reciting it, like, it makes me do it with a frown, like, compared to when we were talking about Paul Bearer cutting a promo on The Undertaker or the rise of Steve Austin. Like, you're giddy with excitement, aren't you? But like, the good stuff that we've covered this year is probably collectively our favorite stuff we've ever covered and watched and whatever. I love it, but it's different. Yeah. There's a totally different tone, and it's going to get worse before it gets better as well. To the match, I guess, at the on the 6th of October, Bret Hart versus Triple H. Mad how there's so much commentary. Lawler pestering Vince McMahon to talk about Bret Hart chasing Diesel and Razor out of the WWF, and like, is Shawn Michaels going to have that happen as well? Would he leave for Nitro, Vince? And Vince just like out of pocket says, well, look, it exists because of the WWF. So he's already on that one that the NWO is only a thing because it's full of ex-Fed guys. And
I had that note too. Like, it's peppered through these TVs, isn't it? Like you say, they're I think they call it the NWO. They call it the NWO, Jerry. Come on. Like, there's it's like an edict, isn't it? Like, mention them as much as possible to the point where it almost feels like they're promoting them at points. But yeah, 1997.
Well, there's another point, isn't there, where Vince bollocks JR for calling Hell in a Cell a cage. He said it's not a cage, it's a cell, because they know that WCW are in the process of selling that Halloween Havoc cage match, which then they would go on to mock out furious. As the differentiation was crucial in the moment. Vince is still trying to suggest that, like, there's a good HBK underneath all of this, and it is in fact Triple H's influence on Shawn rather than the other way around. Speaking of Shawn, he comes out. It's another classic entrance that you'd see looped in the DX footage all the time, where he is literally, with every step, he crotch chops a fan in the aisle. So he turns left, crotch chop, turns right, suck it, suck it, suck it, either side. He shoves the Canadian flag up his nose, gets it trapped. He tries to walk away from it while it's up his nose. Again, what we are talking about here is like iconic DX footage that I know as you were listening, you will have seen. And he kind of sees the Hearts coming down the aisle, Neidhart, Bulldog, and Owen. So Shawn kind of moves over into a safer corner. On commentary, while Triple H is in control, Jim Ross notes that sometimes Bret is too predictable. And they're having like a decent back and forth match. Not amazing. Like it's only all right, and it's perhaps that it's only all right that at this point I want to shout out whoever it was on the 6th of October 1997 who turned their sign into a 3-foot paper airplane, chucked it from their seat and landed it in the ring. That is one of the greatest things I've ever seen, and the fans agree because it gets a louder pop than anything that had been happening in the match. You've got to go and check this out. Like, absolutely amazing. It comes all to a climax anyway when Bret gets a sharpshooter. Chyna pushes the rope towards Triple H so he can survive it, and at that point it all kicks off with everybody around the outside. Bret goes to the ring post figure 4 on Triple H. Chyna manages to break that up and distract Bret, who for a split second considers whether or not he's going to take a swing for Chyna. He elects not to, but as he turns around, there's Shawn Michaels on the floor, drills him with the super kick. Big suck it. Big count-out win for Triple H and DX, the soon-to-be named DX, bail up the ramp. They've won the night, well, in every single respect, basically.
Yeah, and it's funny as well. Like this is one I read the Observers from around the time, and I don't know. I can't imagine it was true because how would it work? But Bret was asked to lose, like to be pinned by Hunter, and they argued down to it being a count out instead. But again, logically, I don't know how that works. But anywho, that's the maneuvering going on behind the scenes on this. But like my biggest take was like you say that iconic Shawn coming out there, and that's the regular crotch chop. But as you mentioned in the previous segment, like, there's loads of bits here where it's, they're already putting the bits together. Like, I thought the XDX crotch chop came later, after the name and after everything else, but like, they're doing it in that previous segment, aren't they? And then Shawn's repeatedly doing it here and seeing it's getting a bit of a reaction, and obviously they're about to really, really run with it. But yeah, there's loads of those little things in there, but I probably shouldn't say that. This is coming from the brain that only realised today that when Shawn Michaels kept calling himself the main event, like that was literally a dig at Bret Hart. Don't think I realised that when I was watching. I just thought that was just he said. The note meant that he'd actually main evented these pay-per-views we've just covered, and that's why. Another nice little dig as an inside one for Bret too. But yeah, fun to pick up those little bits.
He's cutting across both sides, isn't he? Because the main event is a dig at Bret, and the icon that can still go is a dig at Sting. So he's like, he's making sure to nail
Piper
everybody.
probably also. Piper had the icon t-shirt, didn't he, at the time? Because there's like you mentioned before, there's like it's not just the commentary, like you say, the Shawn promos. Like there's literally, it feels like every segment has got a mandated line in it that mentions WCW in some form or mentions Age in the Cage, or there's a lot of that.
And of all the time as well, it's when they're basically between them chasing Bret off to WCW. This place that they've made sound worse than shit is like, oh, by the way, can you go there now? Like,
please don't turn over. It's still live.
It takes us to a week later, the 13th of October. It's a historic one, this. Vince is about to interview the Hart Foundation, but literally before they can get a word in, Shawn interrupts from the Titantron. He mocks Bret Hart for getting old and jerking the curtain. And then he says, look, you've made a big thing about this USA-Canada war this year, but show the footage. Look, it's clear that the Heartbreak Kid, nobody knows Canada like I knows Canada, and they've leaked the footage, so it's just him looking like he's kind of trapped under the flag, dancing. It's all good stuff. Triple H gets the microphone. Well, he sort of gets the attention now. He says, I'm Bret. I'm younger than you. I'm better than you. I'm certainly bigger than you. And they all joke about him having a massive dick. Shawn's like, well, you can take an eye out with that thing. Bret finally gets a word in and says, why don't you degenerates come down here right now? Hunter and Shawn just ripped the piss out of the very idea of doing that. And, you're really scared. Hunter, you beat him last week. Shawn's like, I beat his ass for that stupid piece of tin he's got over his shoulder, and I'm going to do it again at the Survivor Series. Triple H does the kind of the old-fashioned, let me at him, and Shawn's like struggling to hold him back. I'll get you, Bret. They couldn't make this seem like any less of a threat, basically. And then they don't even let Bret come back into the conversation. Shawn's like, you know what, actually, Hunter, Like, I'm tired of Generation X getting a bad rap. Like, are you a degenerate? Because I'm positive I'm one. And Triple H said, I think I'm one. And then Shawn down the lines with the iconic words, D-Generation X. We are D-Generation X. You make the rules and we will break them. And again, Bret, like, just hating his job for the millionth week in a row. You guys won't make it to the Survivor Series. You won't make it that far. But it's like, people have gone to the toilet, Bret. I'm sorry. Like, the big names have left the screen. So like, this keeps happening, doesn't it, to the poor hitman at this point?
Honestly, you can hear a pin drop. Like, and it's weird as well because like your read is very different than mine. I think your read is right, but there was genuinely a part of me as sure as Hunter back. I think Bret cracks a smile. I think Bret finds that funny, or he's finding it funny that he's that annoyed. He's laughing at them rather than with them. But I genuinely think they almost crack him there. They almost do. Like, as a kid, I absolutely loved this segment. I love all of these segments we're about to talk about. But like, to me, they were the funniest men in the world. Speaking of 90s problems, it was grown men pointing at the dicks and saying how big they were. Yep. Again, sorry, lads in the 90s were into that stuff for whatever reason, despite all the other stuff we just talked about. But yeah, I love it. I mean, it's a little bit, it's shoehorned in the name. Like, it is like, yeah, Generation X. Well, how about you called me a degenerate? So how about the Generation X? And it reminds me again of being 13 in 1987 and going past like a group of scallies that are outside our local off license and just dropping to my mum, a group of degenerates, them, aren't they? My mum looking at me like, could you learn that word? Thinking I was dead clever. I'd just been watching wrestling. I'm sorry, I can confess it now, all these years later. But I don't think I'd ever heard the word before, to be honest, until they use it here. But
me neither.
Yeah, they make it weird. Once they shorten it, I think it's a better name, but it's fun nonetheless.
No, yeah, it's and like as if that wasn't enough, I guess, for this night. They go on to basically just sort of have their busiest night yet. I think it's really interesting that like Shawn Michaels, I think, makes a specific attire choice. You know, I was like my attire and my gear and the clothes the wrestlers choose to wear. The prior week when he was doing his big the Click Rules Wrestling, etc., he's in this waistcoat with like a white t-shirt on, and people can visualize it if you've seen the segment. When he comes out for the Canadian flag up the nose bit, he's taken his shirt off and he's let his hair down. And for all intents and purposes, they look like different knights. And you get that here. Like, DX are in the back at first, so you don't really necessarily see them all in all their glory. So when they're kind of coming out to the ring, there's times when like Shawn's got his shirt on, when he's got his shirt off. And it's almost as if they want to speed run like an NWO Chaos run, because the NWO had months and months and months to build up all this incredible footage of the chaos they were causing. Like, Shawn thinks, can we fake this in about 3 weeks? So by wearing clothes for all the bullshit he's up to, it kind of looks like they're raising even more hell, doesn't it? And you kind of get an example of that on this episode, because there's a match between Owen Hart and Karma, and the whole thing is completely stolen by DX, the newly named DX. And we would soon go on to find out why in particular they're looking to stir up shit between the Hearts and the Nation of Domination. So this is a runoff from Hell in a Cell, where Farouk is none too pleased that Owen Hart screwed him for the IC title, basically, because Steve Austin smashed Farouk in the head with the belt. Austin only wants Owen to have it, so that's all of a sudden dragged Austin into Farouk's world, but Farouk is angry with Owen. It's like a nice overlap, and now we've got this Hearts and Nation match. Anyway, before the match even really gets going, DX turn up. Owen gets distracted, Karma gets the advantage, and Shawn and Hunter go down to ringside, where Shawn Michaels grabs Jim Ross's headset, Triple H grabs Vince McMahon's. Triple H calls Bret Hart the droopy dog of the World Wrestling Federation, which has been printed on my brain since the day he said it. Shawn calls Bret a nothing happening son of a bitch. Rick Rude gives DX bananas to eat while they just sit on the desk, just observing the match.
That's one, to be fair. He's more up for the fun than he would have thought he'd be, but you know.
Yeah, he remains serious and stoic, but he's eating his banana, isn't he? Like, he knows how to measure that, I think. Jerry the King Lawler, this is quite a good bit. Jerry the King Lawler having like really enjoyed DX mocking Vince McMahon and JR, saying like, isn't this great, guys? 3 of us calling Monday Night Raw, like, you're putting Vince and Jim Ross in their face. And then Shawn just turns to Lawler and says, did I pull your string and tell you to talk? I used to work for you and you called the shots. I call the shots now. Shut up before I get China and knock you out. And Jerry Lawler's face drops. Like, this is why you love them, even though when you're not supposed to, because you're like, well, yeah, I want to be hanging out. These two are unbelievable. So that ends up with like China gets the headset at first, but obviously she's still mainly the silence behind the violence. So Rude takes the headset, and it's the three of them. Sorry, Ravishing Rick, like takes the headset, and they're just having the cry. And ironically, considering that Shawn Michaels has just basically taken Jerry Lawler's microphone off him, he then gets in a zinger that the King would be proud of, because he says, Hunter, Stu Hart's dead. His body and brain just don't know it yet. He's just walking around Calgary, Alberta. At this point, the Hearts charge at DX, but because the Nation are all out there, the Nation just attack the Hearts. So the Nation and the Hearts are just engaged in this like wild ringside brawl. And you're not even looking at them, because you're just looking at DX fucking about. They start offering, like, the Hearts are getting beaten up, and Shawn and Hunter on mic are like, do you want a banana? Like, Shawn then steals, like, I think it's D'Lo's hat. So he's just like pretending to fight the Nation in D'Lo's hat. They all take off on the ramp. The cameras are just on Shawn and Hunter and China having a whirl of a time. And then every now and then cut back to 8 men, like, beating 10 bells out of each other while nobody cares. Like, it's just win after win after win for Shawn Michaels here, isn't it?
Honest to God, like the scene of him running off with the Nation hat on, again, another one of those things imprinted in my brain, as well as like the weird banana eating that they're doing at the desk as well. Yeah, the fists up, all of it. I love it. Like, but yeah, you say that about like the commentary, and I'm 100% if you saw that line from Jerry Lawler, because he definitely said that or something close to it at some point. But that's another one. Bret and his Calgary like son called, which were somewhat kayfabe, like. Really fucking angry about that one. Also seems to forget who said it out of Shawn and Triple H, so there's some misdirected fire there. But again, they're winding up the right person, the wrong person. I'm not sure, but is it compelling? I mean, it's more compelling than the Nation of Domination and the Hart Foundation having an uninspired brawl on the outside, isn't it? So, or at least for me and you.
Yeah, incredible. It's not even the end of this Raw. So we go into later in the show when it's advertised as Shawn Michaels taking on Flash Funk in a singles match on Raw. Only problem is, absolutely right. Only problem is, Flash Funk has been destroyed by Kane. More on that in the next edition of Housekeeping. But he's left there dead. And Shawn Michaels slides in. Triple H counts the fall. Chyna rings the bell. Ravishing Rick announces him as the winner. Ladies and gentlemen, the the icon of the World Wrestling Federation, Shawn Michaels. Hit the music. And Shawn Michaels celebrates like he's won the Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12 all over again. They like this bit, and they'll obviously down the line they'll recycle it with a bit more effect. But just again, like, the commentators are just disgusted with like DX taking the piss out of all of this, and it's still not over. DX are still in the ring, and basically Sgt Slaughter has ordered Triple H to take on the Patriot. As a sort of, you're supposed to wrestle tonight. So the Patriot comes out on the ramp waving his flag, and then he gets
1984's Del Bilks.
He gets a tap on the shoulder. It's Rick Rude, who just throws hot coffee in his face. Just like
it's the best thing he does. He's into it. I think at this point, Rude, he'd say otherwise by the end of this month. Yeah, he's into it. He's having a good time.
Bret Hart and the Bulldog took like 20 minutes to put the Patriot away, Hell in a Cell, and it felt like 30. Rude's done it by himself with a cup of coffee. Ironically, that is the end of the Patriots' cup of coffee in the big time as well. But meanwhile, in the ring, Shawn Michaels announces Triple H as the winner. What was it we got here? Slaughter comes out, really weird, like gets in their face. He says, thanks to the actions. Thanks to the actions of your henchman, R.R. Rude. Call him Ravishing Rick, you weirdo. But anyway, as he's trying to cut the promo, as you point out, DX are mocking that Slaughter is like getting too close to him and spitting as he talks. At this point, it's just the shirts in the face, like they're guarding it, and it's again, Slaughter can't get a win here for love nor money because all you're watching is DX like just dicking about with him. The Triple H sends Ravishing Rick to the back, and Slaughter's like, no, this is not how this ends. You're going to have an opponent. Slaughter's demanding respect while they're guarding themselves from the split. And Shawn says, all right. We'll show you some respect. Suck it, like that. Just like, right. Slaughter's like, all right, that's absolutely fine. The volunteer's here. And then the music hits. And the volunteer is fucking Ahmed Johnson in street clothes, right?
Full red tights. What's he doing? Is that what he wears on the streets? Like,
he's just got this like red spandex number, like as if he was legitimately surprised by Slaughter before he went out with a curtain. Says, "You want to work Triple H instead of the Patriot?" And like DX, man, they don't even sell it as scary. Like this is Shawn Michaels and Hunter, and they're like, "Oh, Ahmed Johnson, big deal." And then what's made worse, they were right to not give a shit because the nation just run out and beat Ahmed from the back straight away. So DX just run to the ramp and heckle it. The Nation of Domination break Ahmed Johnson's hand, right? Legion of Doom and Ken Shamrock have to come and make a save. It's all very pro wrestling. The baddies have like physically assaulted the goodie. The goodie's friends have come to make the save. Do you give a fuck? Of course you don't. Because on the stage, somehow, DX have acquired popcorn and drinks that they then just start throwing at the fans and leave. Like, it is absolutely astonishing to watch one single act make a mockery of the entire show. And I think it's at this point, when you're watching it through week by week by week, you kind of come to the realization, well, Shawn and Hunter aren't selling a fight with Bret Hart at the Survivor Series. They're selling a concept called Degeneration X that just happens to be bumping into Bret Hart at Survivor Series. They've thought about lists like the New World Order. You don't think about the NWO forming in July and then Hogan selling a fight with the Giant at Hogwild. You just think of the NWO forming and getting the belt as quick as they possibly can, and then adding members when they want to and things like that. And they've and you know, of course, now they'd admit that they were borrowing from the playbook and they were updating it. But Shawn and Hunter are not turning up on Mondays and saying, right, how are we getting to Survivor Series? They're thinking, how are we getting over? That is so single-minded that it's this point that you realize it's been another brilliant night for DX. There's a match against the Hitman Bret Hart in there 3 weeks that you could probably do with selling, but they don't give a shit about that.
No, and that's wrestling, you know, as a whole at this point. And, you know, again, we're giggling through this because, look, we were 12 and 13 at the time, and, you know, them pointing at the dicks and, you know, hiding from Sgt Slaughter's split was the funniest thing 13-year-old Benno had ever seen in his life. So, you know, I'm reliving that a little bit. But it's counterproductive, absolutely, but kind of in the same way that the NWO was very counterproductive because, you know, it wasn't about, you know, they just beat up the heels and the faces because the concept, like you say, was the story of the NWO. And how many times we said that about Steve Austin? More effective when it comes to building matches and rivalries and such. But really, was it about building matches or was it about the next entertainment segment that happened on the award-winning drama Raw is War? Like, that's pretty much the world we're in. Are they taking more than they're giving? Absolutely. Is the wildcard match at Survivor Series 1995 young Benno mad that Shawn Michaels didn't sell for Ahmed Johnson? Absolutely. But, you know, that's, I think, more the thinking there. But yeah, totally. I would have taken, you know, just a little bit of a callback to that. You know, we were friends once. Remember when you helped me? Remember when we teamed with the, you know, with Sid and not the Ultimate Warrior? No, me neither. Oh, well. But like, yeah, they're not in that kind of mood at this point. It's tradition bites. I think I heard that on the other channel.
Shawn Michaels conclusively choosing Degeneration X over the People's Posse. You hate to see it.
Unbelievable. I would never would. I'd have still backed Ahmed, even when I was 13.
Oh, quite right, man. We go to the 20th of October, and this is perhaps, like, this one stuck out to me as maybe the best example of the point I was maybe failing to articulate before, because it's another brawl, but it's Shawn Michaels versus Owen Hart, right, in a kind of straight shootout now between a DX member and a Hart Foundation member. Owen comes out first, and he says, look, I'll put Shawn on a stretcher, and we should do title versus title. My Intercontinental title versus your European title. Rude, China, and Hunter come out on the stage. They can't get going at first because their microphone doesn't work because they're just dicking about. They finally do, and they introduce Shawn Michaels, who enters the match. He hasn't formally answered Owen's challenge. Again, Owen, like, challenging, we should do title versus title, feels like very pro wrestling compared to DX, which couldn't be any further from pro wrestling. It's such a difference in tone. And to that point, Shawn enters the ring holding the European title, then literally throws it out the ring before he does his pose. Like, he doesn't want to he doesn't have it around his waist. He doesn't want to, like, as if to say, well, you can do title for title if you want, but I don't actually want this piece of tin. I just wanted to take it off your brother-in-law. So they have the match. Comes back from the break. Shawn has actually hit a pile driver on Owen on the floor, but it's mainly Owen like sort of pinballing Shawn all around the match. They've got like fantastic chemistry together, even when it's a heel dynamic. It's still really good stuff to watch for it. Shawn's bumping around great. It builds, of course, to the Enziguri. Owen hits that. The big commentary is on, look, that's put Shawn Michaels in the hospital before. And this is where it really stuck out to me that what we're watching is not like the building of a particularly good story or the building of something that is going to make real money. Because the guy that's going to make real money is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Owen is posing because he's hit the enziguri on Shawn Michaels. Austin comes out the crowd, comes in, stuns the ref, and the camera, the hard camera, is shaking from the arrival of Steve Austin. We've watched a bunch of heels being heels to each other, and at the first sight of the top babyface in waiting, he is the difference. This really stuck out to me. It was like all of you people having your internal politics and your feud over this piece of tin, whereas the guy is right there. Now, the chaos he's caused results in him having to slip straight out. You know, we're still talking post-neck break. He's kind of just building something simultaneously with Owen Hart for Survivor Series and with the Nation for something that's to come after Survivor Series. So he's out of there. Shawn Michaels hit switching music on Owen Hart, but because the referee is out, out comes Bret, and then out comes Rude. One after another, they are going to all come out. The Harts and DX have a brawl with each other, and the Harts chase DX away this time. And it's like still DX getting the last laugh, like Shawn does the one this time where he's like, "Oh, let me at him," but he's kind of frozen in place as they carry him away. But the idea is like for once, like the Harts have just managed to get a small physical measure of revenge on DX. As we would find out, it's because something very, very bad has occurred in the locker room that might make the Hearts even angry with DX, but we'll get to that shortly. Just Austin here, man. I was watching this and I was like, I can't wait to get to next week because I'm kind of missing out with Texas Rattlesnake here.
That's it. And everyone else really, the side characters here, apart from in the eye of Vince, who I think still thinks Shawn's the main character here. It's not Steve. Yeah. I think he's going to realize that quite soon, that that's not quite the case. But I mean, the only other notes I had on this is that it was very, like, I loved watching Owen and Shawn go back and forth. But again, the 1995 Benno and me was just a bit like, God, remember when this meant something? Remember when this match would have been important and would have been the only good thing on Raw? And instead it's there to save 12 different stories happening at once and all of these people coming out and running in and one-upping each other to build something else. It's a very different time than the last time we saw these two together.
It is. And to really illustrate that point, we go to the 27th of October. If you thought this has already gone in an odd direction, strap in. The Nation's defaced locker room is revealed. There's a lot of racist graffiti and vandalism in the Nation's locker room that I'm not going to repeat here. And it's way, way, way over the line, even if the Fed thought they were doing like a 1997 proof version of it. Like lots of it is visible that you can see there, and then lots of it is heavily implied. There's a lot of stuff you can also infer. There's also some very on the nose, ardently pro-Canada graffiti alongside it in order to suggest that the Hearts had something to do with it. But then notably, there are also green tints, which seems to infer what's actually happened, which is that it's DX framing the Hearts. But very, very weirdly, that never ever once gets said out loud. And that's like the first of the million problems with this sort of chapter of the story. The Nation come out and they're raging. Farouk's, like as usual, like full of fire over this. Notably, Rocky Maivia in his big R t-shirt, again, by the way, is now walking down side by side with Farouk rather than like necessarily behind him. We will kind of touch on that in a little more detail next month. But Vince McMahon immediately apologizes to Farouk on behalf of the World Wrestling Federation. But Farouk tells him to fuck off, basically. Doesn't accept it. He ties it to just a history of racism in America. It's exactly what he expects, and he'll fight anybody over it. Vince says they don't. He gets quite cross with Farouk. He says, "Whoa, we don't allow racism in any fashion." And he tries to change the subject. But at this point, Rocky Maivia takes the microphone, and the Nation just get rid of Vince out the ring. Rock says, the Hart's family, you crossed the line. I said before, it's not a black and white thing, but I'm a straight shooter and I've dealt with discrimination all my life. That sort of generates the Rocky sucks chant as like Rocky Maivia gets even more confident seemingly by the day speaking on a microphone. And I challenge the Hart Foundation to a fight right now. The Hart Foundation arrive on the stage and get a little bit of a pop, which, I don't know, they're in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Like I don't know if like there's something to that with the kind of the nature of this storyline that they're tiptoeing, but like the Hearts haven't had a pop in America for a while. And I wonder if it's just their defaulting. These fans are deciding that the Hearts are the default babyface in this story, which it's its own thing. Bret says, first of all, brothers, we accept any challenge, but more importantly, I come from a country where there is no racial prejudice. We love people for what they are inside. The USA is riddled with racial prejudice, and your real problem is that you can't see that somebody's messing with you. You can't see that that's the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, and his boy toy, Hunter Hearst Helmsley. They're responsible for the problems between you and me. Now, that's obviously the case here, right? That's obviously the sort of implication of the storyline. But at no point had the Nation of Domination been given the agency to suggest that they were being framed. They went right to the root of assuming it was the Hearts. It took the Hearts to defend themselves and Farouk to think Bret was a liar. And just to make matters worse, Shawn Michaels appears on the Titantron with Triple H. And again, kind of no matter, like we have, I think we're both the same. Like, this is a month and a half of guilty pleasures for us, for the most part, when we're recapping this DX stuff. I don't know. Shawn Michaels calls Bret the Grand Wizard. He calls Bret racist to the core. Says that Bret and his, quote, KKK buddies would wear leather jackets, but they were going to wear white sheets and white hoods. They joke that they heard the Hart Foundation using the N-word, but while the Hearts are on the stage watching DX talking on screen, the Nation have heard enough of these accusations and just deck the Hearts, and there's a massive brawl. Vince on commentary is saying, you know what, if the Hart Foundation did this, they deserve this. And in this brawl, Bret's had his ankle attacked, which is going to matter because he's taking on Ken Shamrock later that night. Obviously, with the title on the line, Ken's got his ankle locked. It's deranged business, this. Like, it is and I'm with you, by the way. I never want this to come across like we're high horsing the sort of stuff that, Christ, we're going into 1998 and 1999. It's going to get grosser. And I like to think that we're fairly balanced about what we would have said and done in the context of the time and all these sort of things. This is not a context of the time thing. This is not a kind of thing that you wave away as, people just weren't kind to one another. This was as horrendous then as it was now. Bret Hart, of course, pushes back on the inclusion of it in the storyline. And worst of all, it is completely and utterly unnecessary. It is one thing for DX to be like getting the last laugh when it's like, oh, the two stables are beating, all our rivals are beating each other up and we're the ones getting away with it, right? It is quite another to be getting the last laugh when you are outwardly, with the worst terminology imaginable, calling somebody a racist without that character even being able to get a right to reply. Like, it's dirty business, this, because Bret Hart is, as it would be proven, is an almost unburyable character. The Hitman Bret Hart, the best there is, the best was, the best there ever will be. But we know at this point, Vince McMahon has told Bret Hart to go and negotiate with WCW. He's intentionally breaking his contract. It's quite hard to watch when they've taken this out of nowhere route to be like, right, we can't bury him, but we could leave some of the audience thinking he's a racist before he goes. Shocking. Like, and I mean it in every sense of the word, shocking telly this.
Totally. Like, and, I'm glad Bret, spoke up about this. I'm not glad that Bret added a homophobia, like, slice to this horrible pie that we're dealing with here, with all of its other already problematic elements of it, not the least of which Hunter having too much fun with some of those lines in there, which, that man has never beaten the allegations. That's all I'll say on that. But it's wrestling being wrestling, isn't it? It's Vince Russo or whoever going, well, Oz did it, so why can't we? Oz the big show, why can't we do it? There's a reason you can't do it, because of shit like this. And like, on top of it, it goes to the overall thematic problem that I think maybe permeates these shows that we're talking about. It is just a gang of heels. It's all heels. Every side is supposed to be the baddie. And then, like you say, you're leaving the fans to choose, which is not great in this horrible moral quandary as well. But then you're also making the victims of the racism be the stupid ones who are the only ones in the room who don't know what's going on. Like, it's just a bad cocktail, isn't it? And it makes for a miserable segment. It really does. That, wasn't great at the time and is aged even worse.
Aye. We go to the match again, a match I have a bizarre fondness for because this was my first Raw, the 27th of October 1997, the first one I was able to watch in my house, as it were. And it's Triple H, announced by Ravishing Rick for the first time as the cornerstone of DX and the future of the World Wrestling Federation. You know, I was right on both counts, wasn't he? There's lots of crotch chops from Hunter as he comes to the ring, and it's really odd watching Shawn Michaels, this for the kind of the last and only time that I can remember anyway, coming out with Triple H to Triple H's Ode to Joy heel music, because we're still not quite there with the packaging of it. So Triple H has got a lot of his old gimmickry, but there's Shawn in this suit, everyone's saying suck it, whatever.
He's still doing this pose, isn't he? And then ends it with a crotch chop. He hasn't quite figured it out yet what I'm supposed to be at this point. Yeah.
You've got the double crotch chop with Chyna and Shawn during the entrance. That's another one of those visuals that they just create. Shawn again is on the headset. He's calling the match with Vince and JR. We get to the finish where basically Chyna manages to hit Goldust with Marlena's purse. There's a pedigree, but it's academic because Goldust has been knocked out. Shawn gets on the table and gives Vince and JR an absolutely massive suck it when his dick is basically at eye level with their faces. Vince looks absolutely raging, throws his pen down in disgust, and they go in the ring and they do a crotch chop with Chyna this time. This happens to be, by the way, worth noting, the very last match for Goldust and Marlena, but we will talk about that another time.
Wow. Didn't realise that at all, yeah.
The two of them as a pair, because, of course, Marlena's been with Brian Pillman over the last month and they've gotten back together, but things are maybe not as rosy in the garden. More on that in the next edition of Housekeeping. And later on that very same Raw, it's the WWF title match, Bret the Hitman Hart versus Ken Shamrock. The match kicks off with Bret trying to work Shamrock's leg. He actually tries a spinning toe hold at one point, which is a tribute to Terry Funk, who we just wrestled in that quote unquote retirement match that they had in Texas shortly before 3 weeks later when Funk would arrive on Monday Night Raw. Bret
takes up, so we'll just talk about that.
Okay. Bret tries to cheat with a steel chair, but Ken Shamrock manages to stop him. And then as the match rolls on, the referee gets bumped and Ken Shamrock gets his ankle lock on and Bret the Hitman Hart taps clean as a sheet. He is tapping out, screaming to be let go, but Shamrock only realizes then that the referee is out. He's unfortunately let Bret out with the ankle lock, and Bret goes to the chair and absolutely wallops him with it, throws on the sharpshooter, but before he can actually even get the win over a knocked out Ken Shamrock in the sharpshooter, here comes Shawn Michaels, who hits the super kick on Bret as he's got the sharpshooter on. Shamrock recovers, surveys the scene, looks around the ring, goes mad again, absolutely batters Shawn, hits him with a belly-to-belly suplex, and again, the fans go berserk for this. It really makes you realize how much this feud has missed some baby faces, just kicking ass because these two guys are just whining at each other all the time, and finally a goodie is allowed to be the one to sort of get some shots in. So Shamrock's hitched, he's really knocked Shawn on his arse here. And at this point, DX and the Hearts, Shamrock leaves and DX and the Hearts come out to kind of keep Bret and Shawn in their corners. But the two of them brawl at this point. It's the hatred between Bret and Shawn sort of finally boiling over. Bret holds the belt up. DX carries Shawn out where he mocks. He's in his suit this week, but he mocks the whole thing again. Even though he does actually want to fight Bret. Bret gets the mic, the promo, after the ad break where he's backstage, and he says, "No matter what happens, I'll get my hands around his scrawny neck." There's a lot of threats, but he doesn't promise victory, which is notable as well. And it's, I guess, worth saying that you have just witnessed Bret the Hitman Hart's last match on promo on Raw until 2010.
Wow. I don't think it gets better there either, unfortunately, but wow. Another good stat.
So DX have the reply where Ravishing Rick is answering the questions from Vince McMahon on Shawn's behalf. Shawn says he wants to speak man-to-man with Bret, but actions speak louder than words. And then pulls his trousers down and gets his arse out, mooning the camera, while Chyna and Hunter cover his gaping arsehole with DX signs, and Shawn just pisses himself laughing and waves. While, again, you can all visualize this if you're listening to this as an audio medium. I'm not getting my arse out on a podcast, but basically, Shawn is leaning over his old shoulder, going like that as his arse is as good as out on Raw. At the desk, again, they've been good with this. The camera always cuts to Vince to get his reactions because we know he's the boss at this point. And he just throws his hands up in disgust as though we can hear DX saying, "You're cracking me up, Shawn." And then Triple H says, "I don't know if this business is all it's cracked up to be." And Shawn literally rolls around the floor laughing. Bret Hart has done his last big go-home promo for the Survivor Series. And this is Shawn's retort. It tells you kind of everything you need to know, doesn't it?
It really does. I think Rick Rude's reaction to it tells you everything you need to know. Like he's getting the full front and never mind the behind. Yeah. But I've got to say, I feel like Vince McMahon's reaction to this is entirely like this is the thing he's most offended by, not the racism that Shawn had as much a hand in as Hunter and everybody else involved early on. It's this. This is what he's really mad about. But taking all that aside, the serious stuff aside, again, another thing stupid fucking teenage Benno thought was the funniest thing that had ever happened. And man had his arse out on telly, mate. That was the greatest thing ever. Don't know, maybe that says something about me, but yeah.
Me too. It was.
And it's still better than the Bret promo, isn't it? For all honest.
Yeah.
As sad as it is that it was his last promo, but yeah.
It's Shawn's performance of it, isn't it? It's effortless at this point. As in, he's literally making no effort, but it's him being him, so it's fun.
Shawn.
Like, yeah. And speaking of that, we go to and I can barely believe I'm saying this, the go-home edition for the 1997 Survivor Series of Monday Night Raw on the 3rd of November, 1997. Ravishing Rick does his intro, this time saying the past, present, and future of professional wrestling, D-Generation X. Shawn Michaels comes out, he's just drinking out of a coffee cup. Vince McMahon on commentary notes that Bret has refused to be on Raw based on what Shawn said last week. And did you notice that for the one time only in her entire run in DX, this happened to be the week that Chyna was dressed in pink and black? Like, is that something? I don't know. There's another like really cool suck it pose between the two. It's still Shawn Michaels music. That will change soon. They get Shawn Michaels gives Triple H a kiss because they start getting F-word chants. Yet again, Paul Michael Cole is mid-ring for what I think might be the worst of the bunch, actually. Chyna goes down on all fours behind him for them to do the push trip. Triple H absolutely leathers him with a shove, like really violently, angrily sends him flying. You can see Michael Cole's head and neck hitting the canvas hard, so he just leaves. Jim Ross, in particular, as you noted, seems quite aggrieved with this. Like he says, "You shouldn't have to take that. Get out of there."
Yeah.
Shawn calls himself the icon that can still go. Calls himself the wrestling god. He tries to play the European title like Hulk Hogan. Triple H says, "Nah, you're not God, Shawn. In order to be God, you got to be as old as God." And then mocks age in the cage. Shawn says he's going to beat Bret because he's the man. And he then goes on to talk about getting his arse out. He says next week he's going to walk naked, which Vince McMahon protests. And then he says, "Oh yeah, and by the way, I'll probably beat up Ken Shamrock next week as well." Triple H calls out Sgt Slaughter to make a match with Ken Shamrock official. Out he comes, to which Shawn Michaels says, "Come on, chin man," as they wonder out loud if he can fit his chin in the ring. Slaughter gets in their face, but this time, Benno, they are prepared. Shawn says, "Wait a minute, this isn't going to work. So he runs into the corner, and they go into this little paper bag, and they pull out full spit guards. Imagine the type of thing medical professionals would wear when it was COVID times. So they've got their faces completely covered as Slaughter talks. He continues to talk. All time a DX visual gag. Shawn and Triple H like, "Nah, still no good. They go back into the bag. They reveal tiny windscreen wipers for the little masks that start going around. They love this gag so much that you can see Shawn and Hunter looking at the Titantron to watch it because it's so funny watching these little wipers go from side to side.
And they still have to stick to them, don't they? They're like, just get it right.
Wind up a little bit. Slaughter does get the last word as he books Ken Shamrock, not for next week, in fact, but for tonight. And like the announcers happen to mention, well, this isn't ideal because like this is the match of Shawn's life on Sunday. You would have that from Shawn Michaels, who is like, "Yeah, whatever, it's fine. I'll wrestle Ken Shamrock in the main event. See you later." Not a single mention of Montreal or Bret Hart or the Survivor Series. It's Shawn and Ken in the main event of Raw.
Yeah, the stuff we're about to get to is the most overtalked story in wrestling history. I think the most undertalked is how bad this build is, really, if you're talking about actually building a match. Even the Shamrock stuff, like you say there, like he gets popped because he's the babyface, but, you know, is he the babyface for main event and pay-per-view they're about to get to? I'm not so sure. We can talk that later, but everyone's too distracted by other things. Brett's, already on his holidays, already talking about never having to deal with Shawn again. Shawn and Hunter are just trying to amuse themselves. And again, us at home watching it back, because again, another one of the funniest segments in Raw history, according to Teenage Me. But and fair play as well to Sgt Slaughter, who's willing to play along with it, and does get in their faces and does make it work too. But none of it's selling you on a pay-per-view or a pay-per-view match. Like, those days are, in the words of Vince McMahon, quite passe, it feels like, at this point.
Indeed. The match itself, Shamrock takes out Shawn and throws him about for a little bit. Shawn's still got his gear on. It looks pretty cool because Shamrock is kind of the first guy that is taking on DX by himself and actually winning, and the crowd respond really well to that. There's a couple of signs that I thought were worth noting. One says, "Who in the hell is watching Nitro?" by 1997. I couldn't agree more. And there's another sign that says, "Go to hell, Phil Mushnick," and we'll explain a little bit why that might have been in the crowd on the next edition of Housekeeping. Shamrock is still dominating Shawn. There's some politics here. Shawn Michaels, this is just a story I remember from the Observers and the like at the time, calls his spots really, really loudly, which per a lot of the scuttlebutt was to try and bury Ken for not being much of a listener. Like, you know what Shawn's going to do 30 seconds before he does it in this match, because he tells you out loud on mic. And the idea was it kind of undermines Ken Shamrock, because that was the kind of guy that Shawn Michaels was. There's one in particular where Shawn just goes, "Clothesline." And then about 10 seconds later, Ken drives Shawn to the floor with a clothesline. Shawn runs away.
While a 12-year-old John Cena's at home taking notes, going, "Okay, that works. I'll do that."
I heard that. That's how they do it. Like, Shawn runs away from Ken Shamrock on the floor. Chyna pushes him into the post, which is what gives Shawn an advantage. To be fair, like, that's the story. You can't get anything in on Shamrock until Chyna interferes. We come back from the break as Rick Rude has walked down the aisle, and Shawn's in charge now, but he can't quite put Ken away. The announcers note how Bret Hart is resting at home while Shawn's got his work cut out for him here against Ken Shamrock. That work in particular, by the way, Benno, was reversal, post, catch me. And sure enough, Michaels reverses an Irish whip, but runs shoulder first into the post. Shawn blocks hang on a second, Hurricane Rana with a power bomb, which is pretty cool, actually, this block of a power bomb by Shawn. But he misses the super kick, and Shamrock's able to try and counter. He blocks the super kick and actually gets the ankle lock in. But right when it looks as if Shawn might tap, just like Bret did 1 week earlier, Ravishing Rick runs in the ring, hits him with the briefcase, and DX quadruple team Ken Shamrock, including a pedigree on the briefcase. And as Jim Ross says, "Will Bret Hart lose the title this Sunday?" Well, just goes off the air.
Nothing but giving it the hard selling. No. Jesus. I honestly, until you put the notes together for this, though, I didn't realize. Obviously, we're into even with the next in your house we're about to get to. I didn't realize Ken was so involved in all this stuff, and I guess maybe that was the thinking. We need a babyface, we need someone there, so at least somebody's getting cheered. But I think it muddies it even further, doesn't it? What is the match I'm supposed to be looking forward to? It.
Yeah, it's like, I think I was quite refreshed at this point, and I needed like one good guy to get something in on DX. Which again is copying the NWO homework, isn't it? It became like you were just gasping for one babyface every now and then, and it captures the magic of, like, well, who would it have been? Sting, I guess, the first time, like in War Games, even though the rest of WCW don't believe him, he still does the damage before he walks out the War Games cage. And there's just those little moments it was like crawling through the desert and seeing the mirage of the can machine, wasn't it? That was what it was, getting a goodie to finally do something to these pricks, because the hearts are heels. Right. It's the 9th of November, 1997. It's the Survivor Series from the Bell Centre in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels have the closest thing resembling a good match that they'll ever have. Or maybe there's one more in the back pocket. We'll get to that in a bit. It's going pretty well. It's a pretty good brawl. Shawn gets the sharpshooter on the Hitman. He can't quite apply it effectively, but it's all right because Bret's in there. He shows him how to do it. Shawn rolls him over. He's got him trapped in the sharpshooter. And then I'm not obviously Bret doesn't call his spots as loud as Shawn did, because I don't even hear Bret quit. But Earl Hebner rings the bell. Shawn Michaels has become the new World Wrestling Federation champion because Bret Hart quit. And that's Bret done with the WWF. Okay, on to the 10th of November edition of the no. Here we go. There it is. Like, it's the Montreal Screwjob. It's all of it.
Yeah.
I'll go first if that's all right. Just quickly on this. I really sat with myself on this, and I sat with this again. I watched the match, which we'll not review. Everybody's seen it a million times.
Yeah.
I
And it
skimmed
is a
some
good
bits
match,
of rest.
to your point. Like,
It is.
it is
It
genuinely
is.
a good match, yeah.
It's
Maybe
it
the only
is
one they ever have, but, maybe
it is. It's the best thing they ever do together. It's really especially as like proper top star rivals. It's like the best, most convincing use of their hatred, I think. And I don't even think that's a hot take at this point, because I think a lot of times when reviewers and people go back and revisit it, they don't realize just how good it was, and it's there to surprise you a little bit, I suppose. So yeah, I watched the match. I watched some necessary parts of Wrestling with Shadows. For the millionth time, had a skim of Bret's section of the book, which is basically the notes he gave to Dave Meltzer 20 years earlier that made it into the Observer.
By date as well, though.
Oh
He
man,
gets all the
man.
dates, all the times. You got every detail.
And what I've realised, right, in an effort to try and come up with something new or something different, the only thing I could land on, and I wanted to sort of explore this with you, is like, this is a thing. Everything that you see happened. It's not work, it's a shoot. Everything that you see actually happened. All of these events took place. Vince McMahon did this thing. Shawn Michaels knew about this thing. Triple H pitched this thing. Bret Hart had this thing happen to him. In the build-up to it, Bret the Hitman Hart stipulated these things. Shawn Michaels stipulated these things. All of it is true, right? I have absolutely no doubt. I'm not a tinfoil hat. I'm not a crank. Everything you read and everything you know and everything you think is true about everything in the build-up to this event. We're recording this in 2026. I'd like to think, who knows, somebody will be listening to this in 2046, right? But I genuinely believe that because this is the thing, this is the only truth, is what actually happened. That remains the same, but you can change, right? So what I thought I would do is that I would reflect on how my mind has changed on this thing in the, now near 30 years since it happened. I remember this happening, and again, being like loosely connected to the internet enough to know what was going on. And then as soon as I was able to like gather enough of my information to realize that, well, what they've done is they've rang the bell on Bret, they've screwed him, I was very angry. I was like, that's really bad. They've screwed Bret Hart. And I would never think anything otherwise. And then you see Wrestling with Shadows on BBC Two a year and change later after this. At this point, you've read the various bits of the Observer, you've continued to fill in the gaps or whatever, and you're like, you're steadfast in your belief. They screwed Bret, they screwed Bret, they screwed Bret, the bastards, they screwed Bret. And they did screw Bret. And it was all their fault. And it was Vince being an awful man. And it was Shawn, like, at this point, he's not in on it, but he was part of it ultimately. So, like, he's been used for this as well. And then it gets to 2002 when you find out that Shawn was in on it, and he admits it as much when he's found God and he wants to come back and he wants to kind of like clear the air and all of it. And you're like, you lousy, I knew you were a fucking liar. I knew it in Wrestling with Shadows, you were a liar. You were a scumbag then, you're a scumbag now. And they're like, because I'm getting older and because the story remains the same, you watch it, and I'm not looking to sort of make a victim out of Vince McMahon in this situation, or Shawn Michaels, or especially not Triple H, that little coward. Bret Hart is a victim of being screwed. Julie Hart is a victim, and her kids are a victim of their entire lives being uprooted in such a horrible and nasty fashion. But where I have changed is I'm not as convinced that Bret Hart is a victim anymore. Like, I think these are three small, rich losers who needed to fucking grow up then. And if there was anything left outstanding in terms of bad blood now, would need to grow up now. It was as cathartic to me as anybody when in 2010 the two of them hugged in the ring, and you can argue how much of a work it was, and the fact that Bret did business with the Fed again. Like, because where I'm at currently, I look at this and I just like, and you read it and, and I just sort of think like, I can't have sympathy in the way that I'm supposed to at this point in my life. A very tired 40-year-old dad for a man that is, yes, pissed off about the manner in which he is leaving his job, but is going to a new job for inordinate wealth, for like life-altering wealth that can give his family comfort when he has given them quite a lot of upheaval, Like, if I love Bret Hart more than anybody really in wrestling, but as a man, if he is so intent on honor and being like a pillar to his beliefs and a totem for all that is good, see the wood for the trees and be pissed off with your situation and then get the hell out of it and appreciate your new situation. And I don't mean have a good working relationship there at Bischoff. That was never going to work. But appreciate the paychecks and realize what the money is and realize what you're able to see the bigger picture. Is what I'm basically saying. See the bigger picture, Bret the Hitman Hart. I'm kinder to Shawn Michaels than I would have been when I was angry and I was young that Bret Hart got screwed, because it's a pretty untenable situation to be in. Bret the Hitman Hart was able to forgive Earl Hebner because he sees that man had a job to do and had a gun to his head to do it. Like, Shawn Michaels, to a degree, would have felt like he had a gun to his head to do it. And even though he was probably more than happy to take the heat because he was that kind of guy anyway, he would have known full well what the entire locker room would have thought of him every single day in the aftermath of that. And he didn't plan to break his back in 1998. He planned to be working there every single day forever and ever and ever and ever. So he was about prepared to alienate every single person that was ever going to work in that locker room with him ever again to do this, right? Triple H can fuck himself. That's the easy one. Vince McMahon, we've watched these Raws, we've watched these pay-per-views. He's not wrong. He's picking the right guy. He's picking the right guy for his ethos, for his business. Vince is a cunt, like everybody says he is, but he's only got one goal here, and it's the what's next, the what's on the next Raw, the what's on the next pay-per-view. Who is putting over Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 14? That much he knows by now. Who's putting him over? Who's my biggest bad guy to put Steve Austin over? Who gets the company that I want to run? Who's more likely to have the matches that I want to see in this company going forward? It's Shawn Michaels. It's Shawn Michaels by a distance. It's Shawn Michaels when the bell rings. It's Shawn Michaels on the microphone. It's Shawn Michaels philosophically in terms of what the future of the company needs to look like. So he's a dickhead for going behind somebody's back. Wouldn't be the first time, wouldn't be the last time. He's done far worse things behind people's back than screw them out of a fake title in a fake match. Sorry, Bret, but he has. Like, they're just, grow up, you loser millionaire geeks. You fucking egotistical dweebs. Grow up, the lot of you. Like, I was a 13-year-old when I was as passionately invested in this story. These were men in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. Like, I'm a man in my 40s now, and I know how I should think about this. Babies, fucking rich, spoiled babies, dicking about in a stupid fake sport. And like, Julie Hart cuts the best promo in November when she like slays Triple H in that corridor and Wrestling with Shadows. Fuck a lot of them.
It's funny because I think you've gotten to the point that I think I was probably at as a kid. Because I mean, I want to lay out first. Like, I have sympathy for Bret because I think a lot of this is tied up in the Owen stuff too. I think you can't divorce those two things. I think in his brain, I think he's the emotion of it all. Being betrayed by the company, and then they did that to my brother. That's where I've got a lot of sympathy.
Sorry, God, unrelated. Like, just to be perfectly clear, I'm talking about Bret the Hitman Hart here in November 1997. Nothing else. Like, I'm not speaking about his resentment afterwards. I'm talking about the guy in those meetings with Vince, what he's prepared to do, what he's not prepared to do. Nothing about the lingering resentment after the fact. Of course, yeah. Just to sort of make that clear.
No, totally fair. And a lot of that massively justified. And I think also when it comes to Shawn, like, I think the little dickhead, as much as like we get entertainment out of it and there's positive that comes out of him being a little dickhead, I do think the whole Bret telling Shawn, I'd lose to you, and Shawn going, that's funny, mate, because I'd never fucking lose to you. Like, that's the nucleus of all this. So I think I blame him for us having to deal with these 30 years of discourse there. I also wish it had just played out the way it was apparently planned to play out. We do a schmoz here, or Shawn wins. She could have done that too, but again, Bret taking it all very seriously in Canada, all that stuff, which is funny, by the way, because like in 2026, like if Seth Rollins was in this position, he'd be holding his hand up, going, "Yeah, beat me anywhere. It's sound. Yeah, I'll take the win. I'll be the real wrestler." We've come a long way from where we were at that point. But I wish it had played out the way Bret imagined it would play out, that like whatever would happen at Survivor Series, he'd then drop the belt to, Shawn or somebody else, Ken Shamrock, whatever. Later down the road, you get the mic and go, "Hey, you American fans, I didn't really hate you. I'm sorry. Anyway, goodbye. I'm off to earn loads of money." I mean, it sounds nice. It sounds very unrealistic.
Sounds shit.
Sounds nice, but shit, yeah. I'd take that point. But like, again, like if they could have made it play out in a more logical way, yes, of course, that would probably, at least in isolation at the moment, not knowing, the little side things it would come up with, biggest of which Stone Cold Steve Austin and the Mr. McMahon character and all that. Just in the moment, if we're talking in the moment, yeah, you kind of wish for that. But to my original point, it takes me back, your take there, it takes me back to my original take, which is, as a kid watching this, not knowing what was going on, genuinely watching, like, I must have been the stupidest kid in the world, because I'm watching this. I watched the entire match. I watched Shawn Michaels win, and your description before was literally that I experienced it. Shawn Michaels beat Bret Hart. Brilliant. Isn't that great? And then me and my mate Sayo, and at the end of our street, we're just like, we'll recreate the match. Isn't it great? Shawn Michaels is the world champion, only to find out a couple of days later, again, via mailbox, via Paramount, that it was all very serious and there was more to the story. And I am tied, as much as we're sick of this story, I am tied to that, because I almost feel like that was where my galaxy brain moment, like, was, there's more to this. And to the point where I say it's similar to what you're saying, like, I also had to learn why this was so terrible, because it didn't sound that bad. It was like, okay, sound, Shawn wasn't supposed to get it, and what? And like, how having that, to have that explained to me over and over again, to go, okay, so this is all very, the business is all very important, and, you got the sport of pro wrestling and all that stuff. It's like, okay, the integrity of the business. And you just kind of get spoon-fed, don't you, all of this, like, time-honored tradition, all that stuff. Like, that becomes part of, like, your wrestling brain, I suppose, and whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but, like, that was like a process, and, like, that's also I'm kind of attached to, because I think it's ingrained in all the people around our age. When did we really become the smart marks? I think we all became. It's through this, isn't it? Through this real life story, through learning all the ins and outs, through reading Meltzer, even if it was through Finn Martin or through other means, like. And, maybe now we've gotten older, we've unlearned all that stuff and gone, actually, no, they are just fucking stupid idiots who are getting paid far too much money and taking this stuff far too seriously. Who cares? It's fucking Canada. And also, if you've been McMahon, like, shut up, you dickhead. He was never going to Nitro the next day. Stop saying that over and over again. It wasn't fucking happening. Like, it's funny that, like, you to your point, you come full circle from all those moments to the point where now, in 2026, it does all just look a bit fucking stupid, doesn't it, at the end of it?
Yeah, your mind might change again. That's the thing, isn't it? Like, I think it's, it's a moment in wrestling history, and you're framed by your life experiences. So I think, depending on the life you go and lead, it's natural that any situation like this, you're going to potentially favor one person over another. And I can support Bret Hart's honor in a situation like this, because I think having honor is a positive trait. That's something that you want out of your kids or your friends or yourself or whatever. And then other times, on another day, you might have had a meeting with somebody in a job where, like, God, they're just such a pain in the arse. Like, I just want an easy day at work. Why are they being such a pain in the arse? And then you're just like, well, like, these two wrestlers, these idiot wrestlers, sound like pains in the arse, and it would be very easy to be like, yeah, but he's got what he wants over there, and he's got what he wants over there. So why, as someone in the middle of this, can't I just get what I want as well? Like, to boil it down to its simplest terms, and then to short, like, I don't want to say to Hunter's credit, but he has like the tiniest shred of a point of, like, right, it doesn't matter why the deal with WWE's gotten done, but it's gotten done. Why are we doing anything for him? He is leaving. Fact, he is leaving. Like, what obligation?
Why was he still the champion at that point? Like, why did he not already lost the belt? Like, why is he walking around with the belt?
Hunter's a prick, but the fundamental of what obligation do we have to him is exactly the one. I'll use the example again that, like, the Young Bucks would have to a CM Punk at the tail end of AEW. Like, by the time that he's put Jack Perry in a headlock, what do we owe this man? Get gone. Like, that would be the mindset of a Triple H. You just wants him out the way, out the door, that he knows that they're cooking something good here on Raw, and, like, Bret isn't part of it, and now he's literally not part of it. He's leaving. Like, so it's just, it's rubbish.
And the solution still, and I know you're not saying this, but the solution still isn't a solution, is it? Like, all those things can be true. It's still a fucking, shitty, dirty thing to do. And I think they can all be wrong, but there can still be a ranking in wrong. As Vince at the top.
Yes,
it's Shawn next. It's Hunter next. It's Bret at the bottom of the pile. Yeah. But, that point still stands, absolutely.
We'll wrap it up. What would you do?
Because unbelievably, loads of great things come out of it. Like, like, that's the as tiny as this is, as tiny as the men involved are, as tiny as it is really when you boil it down to like, office people not getting along in your office and it, becoming this worldwide story we've been talking about for this long. Like, it is also really tiny. But I think the reason, unfortunately, as much as, we both had to be dragged kicking and screaming to talk about it, you kind of have to talk about it. It's also gigantic because, in a way, it could have been great for everyone. Shawn could have taken the heat further. Bret could have, went with the moral justification and righteousness to WCW that, as you said earlier, should have been bigger than it was. Obviously, there's Austin and McMahon. We'll get to it a bit. It's kind of both things at the same time as well. Like, it really is. It's just... And maybe that's why everyone's found it so fucking fascinating for 30 years, to the point that they'll still be making documentaries about it in 15, 20 years, won't they, in 30 years? Like, it's just...
I find the ripple effect a little bit depressing in a way because, I mean, we're going to get to it in a second, like Vince's interview 2 weeks later on Raw, which may as well be as part of the show as like a Shawn Michaels in-ring promo, to be honest. But, like... there's something like sort of, I don't know, there's something in keeping with the cruel reality of the world that the two men out there in spandex giving their bodies to this mafia hit or whatever you want to call it are, not even really part of the ripple effect that is positive, which is the fact then they both need to be out of the way realistically for the Austin boom. We're going to get to it, but like, and then again, none of this is a fresh insight or anything, but like, that's the worst bit of the world, isn't it? When the rich white man is the one that ends up on top, and it's the people that like labor and graft and work are the ones that eat shit. Like, that's ultimately, it's the same as every other shite capitalist situation. Like, the rich white man gets richer off the back of how this turns out and becomes a billionaire with the butterfly effect of this, and the two guys that are kind of locked in this war that he's in part puppeteered, by the way, both end up on the sidelines eating shit within a couple of years anyway. It's like, that's a sad parable for what most people experience in their life, isn't it?
No, totally. And to your point before, like, there's a chain effect with Bret, isn't there? Of, being handled by WCW is probably not that important in the grand scheme of things, but all the other terrible things that happen and the end of his career, and like I say, and all of that, it's like the start of just a really dark period in his life. That's where, again, I know you agree, that's where he becomes the victim, doesn't he? It's like the long-term kind of effects of this. I mean, as much as we love him, Shawn can fuck off, and he's back with his, sore back in a few years anyway, so, there is that too, but no, totally, that's true. I mean, you asked what I still don't know, like, what a solution is. I think a solution probably is maybe what I said earlier. Just do this, just go through with the schmoz. Like, I don't even think Vince McMahon believes that Bret was going to Nitro the next day.
No.
Get the belt off him another point. Or use your fucking, be the boss. Like we all say about Tony Khan, be a fucking boss and tell Bret that he's losing to Shawn in your house Degeneration X or at some point before that because of the contract. Like, find a way to make that work. Or option A, which is probably the easiest option, and I think it's either Jim Cornette or Kevin Nash. I've heard say this before, like, outside of Kevin Nash pretending it's a work, because it's fucking not. Like, Bret shouldn't get, as soon as like all of the conversation happens with, we can't pay you, Bret, or we're thinking we're not going to be able to pay you, Bret. Maybe don't do that with the bloke who's got your belt. Maybe make that decision earlier. Maybe take the belt off him first and then go, by the way, mate, now that we've got the belt, do you want to go back to Eric Bischoff and ask him for that 20 million? Do you want to do that? Like, that would probably be the actual solution, wouldn't it?
Do you think it was like when you desperately don't want to answer an email, so you want to press send at 16:59 on a Friday? Was that Vince McMahon's attitude towards the reasonable creative control clause? He was like, I'll not think about that now. I'll do the rest, and then I'll look at that at the very end of the day. And that's why he just kept not asking, because of that one daft, stupid little thing.
Maybe.
It's boring.
I could have vacated the belt. Would it have been the end of the world?
We're doing it better. We're getting sucked in. Bloody vortex. I heard myself say reasonable creative control, and I was like, God, here we go. I've done it.
You had 30 days. You had 30 days, Michael. Come on.
God.
And he had those dates exactly right in every email that he sent to Meltzer. 24 hours later, Meltzer's got like a Bible on like every single conversation that took place. Like, oh, God bless you, Bret. That's a man with a grudge,
Oh, it's class. It's class. And
what would you have done?
Maurice.
Can I ask you? Would you have done it?
I don't know. I think I should have a better answer prepared for this, shouldn't I? I disagree with you slightly. I don't like the schmoz. I think it's a shit pitch. You're going off.
It is, yeah.
You got your biggest
pay-per-view at the end of the pay-per-view.
Yeah, you've got like, and let's be honest, right? Vince has made this cutthroat decision business first. So why would he pick a match finish that isn't business first? Why would he? He's thinking, I'm actually delivering Bret versus Shawn. Finally, I'm delivering what I've been wanting to promote, and that's what I'm giving them. And again, to go back to Triple H's, the nastiest, most cynical bit of Triple H's point, for Bret to walk off into the sunset onto Nitro. Why? I know it sounds like too brutal, but why? Yes, of course, Bret wouldn't do a thing to tarnish your brand. He would love it with all his heart, and then he would go to WCW as an honest man. He would, but Eric Bischoff doesn't give a shit. Hulk Hogan doesn't give a shit. Whoever's going to be alongside Bret on that product doesn't give a shit. And they're standing arm in arm, or they're feuding with a guy that's gone off looking like 10 foot tall on Raw's War. I don't like that. What would I have done?
Is the heat difference if Shawn gets a belt that got vacated by Bret, though, and he's an undeserving champion, than it is here? He's an undeserving champion, isn't he? Because we all know what happened. Is it really that different?
Yes, I think it is. Shawn Michaels, right? The trick of Shawn Michaels is that he's a liar, but his lies have enough of a grain of truth that he can believe them. He can lie about how he defeated The Undertaker at Hell in a Cell, but he did defeat him. That's how DX works. The lies is in how brave they are and in how bombastic and bold they are. The truth is in they are actually dominant, they get it done through the snake ways, but that kind of has to be true. I think I'm talking myself into saying I think the belt does need to be on Shawn Michaels. I think he's the top heel and Steve Austin's the top babyface, and there is absolutely not a single shred of debate that these are the two men that need to main event WrestleMania. If this was at any November in any year and you were looking up and down that roster, there is one singular WrestleMania main event on this entire show, and it's Shawn versus Austin. That's what you're going with. And in a funny sort of way, I wonder if Vince McMahon is even more simple-minded than we give him credit for in this situation, and he really isn't thinking about it because he's wondering, I think I might put Billy Gunn and the Road Dogg together. What am I going to do with the returning Jeff Jarrett? These Jim Cornette promos are getting a bit of steam. Just gets a phone call. Oh, shit, yeah, Bret and Shawn, I've got to do something about that. Maybe he's not stewing about it all day long. Maybe he's just in the middle of designing the next Austin 316 t-shirt they're going to sell by the truckload, and Bret and Shawn is kind of 10th on his list because they're not draws and they never were compared to the Texas Rattlesnake, who's bundled into town and is the one actually turning the quarter hours, I don't know. I sometimes wonder if he had far less concern over it than maybe we project onto him.
Maybe.
I don't know. Would I screw Bret Hart? Maybe is that the answer? Would I just
I think it's you're one of the people who say, I'll go back in time, I'll kill Hitler. No, I'll go back in time and I'd screw him twice. That's what I'd do.
Just give me the fake belt, Bret, mate. Yeah.
And I should say that I'm not advocating for an Eric Bischoff is the belt situation. I suppose I shouldn't. Maybe that's the worst of all the ideas. But I stand by. I think do it earlier. Or I still think it could have been done later. But again, you lose so much of the magic without it. So maybe we need a ruthless Michael Hamflett in charge so that we get the boom that follows,
You could have done, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a sort of a pragmatist's way out here, because by this point they had ran Taker, Shawn, Triple H, and Taker, Shawn and Bret at Madison Square Garden. They'd run Bret, Shawn and Sid 3 or 4 times in January, February. Why not put them both in a triple threat with Ken Shamrock and have Shawn pin Ken with a super kick? Or something like that.
Built to that, haven't he? Clearly, yeah. All the pieces were there to do that. You know what? That's a solution, isn't it? 3-way.
Ken's got the ankle lock on Bret, and then you do. See, right, all right. I'll throw him back at you, and then we will. I swear to God, let's say 2 weeks out. 2 weeks out on Raw, right? They book a triple threat because Ken's found himself in the mix, and he's got the ankle lock on Bret, and Bret's tapping, but the ref doesn't see it. And Shawn super kicks Ken out of the ankle lock and pins him there, and then he wins the WWF title. The stupid piece of tin. Shawn's got it. And Bret's argument is on camera, this is, you didn't beat me, Shawn. Now we have to face each other at the Survivor Series. But now, so you're still getting the Bret and Shawn singles match, which is what people have always wanted. Vince is kind of as good as promised it 3 times, and he doesn't like not getting to deliver this match because he's tried over and over again to do it. It's Bret's last buy rate that he can potentially draw before he leaves for WCW. Then, how would you feel about Bret saying no to losing that match? He's not got the belt over his shoulder anymore. And Vince is like, we've got it. We've got the Survivor Series. Shawn's got my belt. Now this is your last night. Can you take the 1, 2, 3? Like we're not taking the belt off you. Yeah. You've got one last night in the company, and you're looking at the lights like every other wrestler's ever wrestled a day in their life. Like, are you then more along the lines of how Bret? Yeah, just do your business and take your unbelievable contract and walk off into the sunset with your own. Like, Bret's head was held high regardless, by the way. Like, we get so lost in this idea of like, I just want to leave. I want to cut this promo on Raw and leave with my head held high. It was higher for getting screwed. Like, he has left with all of his dignity intact. Yeah, like he's the man in the right here. He's the guy with the high ground. It's the other ones that have been like, when the Mafia have taken a hit out on somebody, the Mafia are still the heels, even if their plan was clever and even if they were clever in how they delivered it. You know, you take the belt out of the scenario. Is it really a big deal that Shawn pins Bret on his last night?
I think the pieces are still there, aren't they, with the whole Shawn, I wouldn't job to you type stuff. So I think you just wouldn't put them in that situation at that point. To be honest, I'd have just done that three-way you mentioned, done that at Survivor Series, just made that last-minute change. And I know that would have taken the Bret versus Shawn match away from us, but, you know, it's not really remembered for the match either, is it? So
true.
That would be the agreeable, solution there. But here we are 30 years later debating it like everyone else, or like every other podcast. Sorry, folks.
Next month.
If you can fix it, put it in the comments. How about that? There you go. Let us know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I welcome people's suggestions, but on the next month's edition of Housekeeping, we're going to talk about Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's the rest that actually matters in the period of time. We'll go to the 17th of November edition of Monday Night Raw. It's 8 days after Montreal, because then we really can draw a line under this, because we're going to recap Vince McMahon's infamous interview with Jim Ross, entitled Why Bret Why? The Jim Ross sincere and earnest voiceover says that Bret Hart had given his 30-day notice, and this is over footage of Bret smashing the monitors, and his actions spoke volumes. Right out the gate, Jim Ross puts it to Vince, did you screw Bret Hart? And Vince McMahon flatly denies that. He says, I didn't screw Bret Hart. The referee didn't screw Bret Hart. Shawn Michaels certainly didn't screw Bret Hart. Bret Hart screwed Bret Hart. And he can look in the mirror, because he can't say mirror, and know that. Jim Ross says correctly that people at home will be groaning when they hear that, and it's just Vince McMahon ducking responsibility. And Vince pushes back a bit and says, well, I don't think that at all. I think I'm taking responsibility. I'm not suggesting that all my decisions are accurate, but I do think that I've got a good average of good decisions versus bad decisions. The thing with Bret is that he did not follow the time-honored tradition on the way out. Bret screwed Bret. There is a time-honored tradition in this business, and for somebody that respects tradition in the way that he does, I would have expected Bret Hart to understand that. Bret screwed Bret. And by the way, just for those, everyone's seen it, what am I even saying? Time-honored tradition, he's not about doing jobs when you leave. That's what he's referring to, but time-honored tradition is the wording he has chosen. You know what, and I can understand that. Like, you're not going to go on TV and say, when you leave, you're supposed to lose. Like, they had to come up with a sort of a way to talk around it. Yeah. JR says, all right, Vince, well, a lot of people on the internet know that Bret Hart should still have 18 years left of a 20-year deal that he signed last year. So who decided for him to leave at all? And Vince says, well, it was a joint one between me and Bret. We got together and we orchestrated the opportunity for WCW to, quote, steal Bret. Vince says he didn't believe Bret Hart was justifying his wage. Bret said, for creative reasons, he was kind of unhappy with the direction of the World Wrestling Federation, that he was, quote, second banana to Shawn Michaels, that Shawn Michaels had, quote, stolen his spot. And the two of them, that being Vince and Bret, orchestrated a 3-year, $3 million a year deal. Vince believes at the time it's the richest in wrestling. He's working 125 days a year, as Vince been reading Meltzer's Observer. He's got all the info. The least I could do for Bret is to help him help himself. He says when they get it over the line, he congratulated Bret for getting a good deal. He says that, to be totally frank with you, JR, Bret Hart just wasn't paying off for my business financially. I didn't want to lose Bret, but he wasn't paying off financially. JR asks him about getting spat in the face, destroying the monitors, smashing Vince in the face in the locker room. And Vince says he was disappointed Bret hit him. He got a concussion, minor vision issues. I've seen Bret crowing about it. He says, quote, even at 52 years old, things would have been different if there had been a confrontation. There wasn't a confrontation. I allowed Bret to strike me. I hoped he wouldn't, but that's what happened. Jim Ross asks if he says he's going to press charges. Vince says he's considering it, but he probably won't. JR, listening to Benno Hamflett, asks Vince how he would have preferred the Bret Hart WWF story to end. Vince says he would have wanted a dramatic one that would have given him dignity, and then kind of like waffles about ultimately getting him to do the job. He keeps mentioning, I would have wanted him to follow the top on tradition. I would have wanted him to get him pinned. He says maybe Bret gets pinned after the most. He doesn't say get pinned, but he says maybe Bret loses the most grueling match and then stands up and bids farewell after shaking his opponent's hand.
To the
Furthermore, I want to watch I want everybody. He's talking as Bret at this point to watch my match and show those who follow in my footsteps how you do business. Jim Ross asks Vince finally if he has any sympathy for Bret Hart, and he says, "I have no sympathy for Bret for not doing the right thing. Bret Hart made a very selfish decision. Bret screwed Bret. I have no sympathy for Bret Hart." I mean, he's a wanker here, obviously.
Yeah.
He's a liar. He's a spin doctor. But if you had three mates that had a really grisly fallout and you went and sat with them one after another, they'd give you their take, wouldn't they? And they'd have spent a bit of time thinking in their head about how it all played out and how it all shook out, and they'd try and find bits at which they felt they were at fault, and then they'd try and find bits at which they felt they were trying to do right by everybody, and then they'd try and find bits at which, once the fallout has happened, how it occurred, and that's their take on it. And again, I think this whole thing is so overblown now. What I'm watching is a guy either lying to me, lying to you, and a little bit lying to himself, but also speaking what he believes is his truth. You know how both these things can be true. Somebody can be telling a bold-faced lie, but they can be telling what they believe is their truth. CM Punk. And the best orators and the best talkers can do so in a way where just listening to the story is captivating enough. And I think ultimately that sheer captivating delivery style is what beds this gimmick into the world of the World Wrestling Federation and brings him into the life of Stone Cold Steve Austin. So net positive, cunt.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing, isn't it? He's your company who's also been like, yeah, and I'll let him hit me as well. You know, that's his version of CM Punk. Yeah, Jack Perry lunged for me first until we saw the CCTV and until we watched Wrestling with Shadows. You know, you do see things quite differently there too. But that's exactly it, isn't it? Though, I haven't got a shred of sympathy for him in the situation because, one, because he's the stupid fucking cunt who offered Bret 20 million in 1996 when the arse was coming out of the company. You fucking moron. What are you doing? It clearly wasn't that important because when he went, guess what happens, mate? You have the greatest success you ever have ever.
Yeah.
And also the other reason you have the greatest success you have ever, exactly where you were going there. You list all those things about him: cunt, liar, excellent delivery, but comes across terrible. That is literally that's the formula, isn't it? That's the formula that does make them all that money. Makes him the big heel in the company, you know? That's 100% true too.
It's I wonder how much of this was because the story goes, doesn't it? That was it. Vince Russo said Vince McMahon thought he would come across like a great baby face on this, and the audience would be like, "Thank you, Vince, for sorting this little mess out. We appreciate you." And obviously, he was miles off, but as soon as he was kind of talked round and he saw the feedback, he realized how to run with it. What a dipshit, man! But he was at least able to kind of steer into it once he realized where it was going. But very interesting to speak so candidly about Bret not being value for money as a commodity, because I do wonder, would any of if you land on a finish, the schmoz, the goodbye, the whatever, and Bret just leaves and they shake hands and he walks out of Titan Towers and goes straight into the CNN Center, Vince probably buries Bret less. Does that make sense? This doesn't happen, does it? This segment doesn't happen. What happens when a wrestler leaves the WWF in the 90s? You never hear from them again. They never existed. They get edited out of video packages. Yeah, that would have Bret would have been poochied. That's all it would have been. Yeah. And instead, he's right, we're featuring him. but I can't talk about him like he's a big deal because otherwise I'm putting him over right before he debuts on Nitro. So I'll just basically say that he never drew and he wasn't worth the money. Like, it's just like that. That all that stuff made worse happening in retaliation and happening in reaction and anger and whatever you want to say is the stuff that wouldn't have happened if they'd landed on a finish.
Yeah. And meanwhile, they're literally doing anything for a rating, aren't they, by throwing it on there? Like that's also part of the computation as well. But also as well, like you say that about doing that for Bret. Like they also Bret then becomes the main character for TV for the next fucking 6 weeks still as well. Like it's like that's a positive in Bret's box as well, isn't it? It's like, this Bret Hart character sounds really interesting. Where can I see him? Not here, but we'll mention him every fucking 10 minutes.
Well, friggin' hell, yeah. Like, so we finally finished talking about Shawn Michaels versus Bret the Hitman Hart. It's the Raw after the Survivor Series, so let's spend a month building Shawn Michaels versus Bret the Hitman Hart better than the last month, because we land in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and we're going to speak a lot about the Hitman, even though he's now a ghost in this place. But not before, for the very first time, Benno, we hear the DX theme. The long
shopping, you can't see it, but I'm crotch shopping in the video.
Oh my God. The long intro with the bow to the masters, the break it down. Nobody in the building knows what it is. At first, it's like bum, bum, and it's just playing out to like the colours haven't even really been established yet as the neon green. So nobody's quite sure. And then it just flashes up, D-Generation X, and you get all these flickering images of Shawn and Hunter and all the misadventures they've been up to for the last month on the Titantron. Loud chorus of boos. Ravishing Rick appears on the stage. You can see some signs at this point that say things like WWF has no heart, respect Bret, Bret was screwed, if Bret goes, we go, all these sort of things. Rude's on the stage getting absolutely enormous heat. There's just really, really loud bullshit chants. He tries to introduce Shawn Michaels, and he finally does. The DX music hits again because, again, they haven't quite worked out how best to make the order make sense, but we get the music. Here come Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and Chyna, notably separate from Ravishing Rick still, beginning of the end stuff here. And they're looking at the Titantron. They're really happy with this theme and the video. They know this has completed the NWOification of their act. Triple H is spitting at people. Shawn's using the world title and the European title to make an X to do his crotch chop with. Jim Ross says it right out front. Bret the Hitman Hart has left the WWF, and he has left because of Shawn Michaels. Ravishing Rick, as DX hit the ring, congratulates Shawn Michaels for his win last night and shakes his hand, which is pointed based on what we know about how fuming Rick Rude was, and something else that's coming. Shawn takes the mic and he says, DX is on top of the wrestling world. For all you people chanting, we want Bret, Shawn Michaels beat Bret Hart in his own country, in his own hold, and he's the new WWF champion. If you thought DX was hell before, you have seen absolutely nothing yet. In a wonderful, wonderful Freudian slip here, he says, the WWF was not big enough for the Heartbreak Kid and Shawn Michaels. That was great. He says, so self-obsessed he forgets Bret even exists as a human anymore. He says, so I put him in his own move and I ran his ass down south with the rest of the dinosaurs. Oh, and by the way, Hitman, the gents down there who are not dinosaurs, they're my friends, and they're going to beat the hell out of you whether you like it or not. Not Bret Hart, not Hulk Hogan, not Randy Savage has the will to be the best. Shawn Michaels will outwill them because he's got God-given, pure, natural talent. It looks like a vein is about to pop in Shawn's head as he screams this word at this infuriated Canadian crowd. We go back to Ravishing Rick, who's speaking on Shawn's behalf at this point and saying the Heartbreak Kid will fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. And it's a nice callback that to when Shawn was the Intercontinental Champion and Marty Jannetty came out of the crowd. Shawn never learns lessons that whenever he says he'll fight anybody, anywhere, anytime, problems arise. Because sure enough, that sounds like an open challenge, and Ken Shamrock's music hits. Shawn does know, as Shamrock's music is playing, I'd fight anybody, but I wouldn't hit a 52-year-old man. So he's got that little dig in there about Bret, and out comes Ken Shamrock. Shamrock is obviously just a week after making Bret and Shawn tap, which Jim Ross recaps. Shawn mocks Ken and says, "Okay, Ken, I'll give you this microphone. You see if you can put some words together, because we call that a sentence, Ken." Shamrock calls them all a disgrace to the human race. He kind of goes mad sexist and off color with China, saying that she should, he says she's a man, and if she is a woman, she should go back to the kitchen. Triple H looks really pissed off there, and he flips Ken Shamrock off. But China, to be absolutely fair to her, just doesn't ever sell it. She just stays being China, doesn't drop out of character or anything. Gets a pop, all this stuff, I must say. Like all this, like, as with like the homophobia with DX, it always gets a pop.
Of course.
Shamrock says that Rude's an old man, and as for you, Shawn, sexy boy, I'll punch a hole in your sexy chest. Shawn grabs the microphone back at this point and says, "Okay, good sentences, Ken, but I've decided you'll stop talking now." It's quite sweet, this bit. He says, first of all, like, China will absolutely batter you, mate. And second of all, this old man right here, and he goes to Ravishing Rick, and he's like, "You want to be careful, mate, because he'll kick the fucking shit out of you." Like, and he gets like right on Ravishing Rick's side for once about how like he could batter Ken Shamrock in his sleep. And I was like, I've never actually seen you even make eye contact with Rick Rude before in this entire thing. And it's quite good that you're like maybe he's realised
right at the end
by Rude on screen shaking his hand and acknowledging him, even though he knows how fizzing he is. He's like, oh, he's business, so I can trust him maybe for what. Maybe that's the first time Shawn's ever thought that. I thought that really stuck out. Anyway, before like Shawn can kind of carry on his tirade at Ken Shamrock, out comes Sgt Slaughter. Shawn calls him Sgt Slobber. Slaughter stumbles through his words, but he says that Shawn's got to defend the title at Ken Shamrock down the line, but Triple H has got to face Ken Shamrock tonight. And to make matters worse for DX, Sgt Slaughter's going to sit ringside and DX are barred from ringside. In the closing moments of the actual match, you kind of led to wonder, has Ken Shamrock actually got D-Generation X's number? He's got Triple H in trouble. Rude goes onto the apron, but Sgt Slaughter physically pulls Ravishing Rick Rude off of the apron. Triple H pokes Ken Shamrock in the eye, but realizes that he's up shit creek, so he just punches the ref. Shamrock still has Triple H in trouble. Slaughter deals with China, and Triple H is tapping out. Obviously, no finish because the referee's out. Here comes Shawn. He runs out. Rick Rude throws the briefcase. Shawn Michaels catches the briefcase out, breaking stride, and looks absolutely class. He smashes Ken Shamrock in the back with the metal briefcase, and Raw goes off the air, but only as Shamrock is seen kicking out of the briefcase shot at 2. And we're left to wonder what has happened as Raw's gone off the air. Do you want me to quickly pick that up, and then we'll sort of recap all of this? So it's revealed at the very start of the 17th of November edition of Raw that what happened at the end of Raw is that Sgt Slaughter, who was there still stationed ringside, registered a 3 count by Ken Shamrock on Shawn Michaels when he rolled him up. Rude's going to intro DX. We'll go into that shortly. But we've left this night effectively sending the fans home happy with Shawn getting his shoulders pinned at the mat, which is hen's teeth rare at this point. But then in an angle that is designed to make you watch the following week to see it for yourself. So Ken Shamrock, now without having a title over his shoulder, has made Bret tap, he's made Shawn tap, and he's pinned Shawn's shoulders to the mat. Like, it's a push. They're keen to get a babyface going, aren't they?
Absolutely. And in like the shadow of Montreal, like where, you know, ratings are up because people are like, what the fuck happened last night? I need to find out what's happening next. Maybe there's part of people who think, well, they're mentioning this Bret Hart character a lot, so surely he's going to turn up. Like, in that window, why not use that to, you know, as we said, you know, the coming out first, you know, get a bit of ratings there, give Hunter a bit of time, give Shamrock a bit of time. Like, it is designed clearly to do that. I think it's a bit of a, not a fool's errand, but I do think, like, Shamrock's a good upper mid-card babyface, isn't he? Like, he's a good physical babyface, probably never going to be able to carry his end on the mic. Kind of one-dimensional, as fun as he is as a character. Like, but, like, beggars can't be choosers. Like, my memory of this period of the WWF, when Bret, maybe it was, I was worked by the sheets that I was reading at that time, but it felt like a dark time. It felt like there's no wrestlers left. You know, forgetting the fucking Stone Cold Steve Austin is right there. But it's shallow otherwise, isn't it? Like, at least on the babyface side. So they're having to get going someone. They've chosen Ken, which is a bit of an uphill climb to sell a whole pay-per-view around, never mind the DX branding that comes with it as well. But they're trying their best to use that time, absolutely, to get a new babyface over. So yeah, you've got to give that credit, as well as, you know, like I say, we're going to be talking the pay-per-view on the next show. You know, as great as my memories are of all of this and all of the, DX coming out to the music for the first time, as you said at the top there, and not quite getting it yet. The very obvious bit that Jim Johnson's written in there, break it down. That's the bit to come out, lads. Like, don't wander out before. Don't awkwardly have Rick Rude there. Just wait for that to happen and come out the curtain. They figured it out, but it takes them some time.
Well, to your point, yeah, as the 17th of November Raw starts proper, they've tightened it all up. Ravishing Rick introduces them. They come out on the break it down. It's now done the thing where it's got the flickering Titantron over the top of them entering, so it's even more sort of scattershot and everything feels more chaotic, and it's been perfected at this point. Interestingly, when Rick Rude comes out on the stage, Jim Cornette on commentary, because this is probably not going to come up and it's probably not a big deal, but this Raw was taped, and Jim Cornette happens to mention on commentary, well, this guy pops up everywhere. More on that in a minute. Shawn is fuming that Shamrock beat him last week. He says, nah, no chance. That wasn't a real match. Ken, you can't beat me. I don't respect you. D-Generation X respects nobody. I'm not scared of having a go at your mate Bret Hart, and I ran his ass to WCW, and I beat up the rest of his family as well. So Shawn said his piece about supposedly getting pinned. Hands the mic over to Triple H. She says, Slaughter, get your fat ass out here. Slaughter does come out, but actually gives them both a bit of shit back for a change. He says, Shawn, you got pinned last week. I was the one counting the three. Shawn sort of starts patronizing, clapping him. Very clever, very clever. Triple H gets right in Slaughter's face and says, look, like, not pissing around now. Do not meddle in DX's business. And then basically goes on to say that according to Slaughter's wife, Slaughter's shit in bed now, reckons that Triple H's dick is bigger, and that his wife wants to fuck him instead. Only problem is, when he says the phrase, stick your chin in my business, his voice breaks like he's a 13-year-old boy. You stick your chin in my business.
I can't get that voice out my head. Oh, it's so terrible.
And he threatens to shag his wife again if Slaughter decides to cause any more trouble. And that, of course, gives you the new sort of inciting incident for what's about to come. Slaughter's none too kind here to all these comments. Drills Triple H in the face. So DX deck him behind with Rude's metal briefcase. They strip him of his clothes. They smash him in the face again with a case. They pedigree him while he's knocked out. And then they just cover him in bog roll in the shape of an X, and all do a crotch chop. Like, Slaughter's been like sort of completely stripped of any of his dignity here, as well as his clothes and all of that. It's like for a guy like Slaughter, he's like barely a baby face, let alone the fact that he's one with he's an authority figure, and he's not one when he's with Steve Austin. It's quite a good job of getting some heat and sympathy on him here, I thought, to be absolutely fair to them.
Like I said before, short on baby faces. Sarge, he could work a match. More on that on the next housekeeping. But yeah, I mean, as an angle, it is memorable. Like, and it fits perfectly with DX. It's weird that like Cornette is the most outraged ever because they're throwing toilet paper on him. But it's very, American fucking, prankster movie type thing that act like DX would be doing, wouldn't it? Like, it works. It's just questionable what we're building to. But again, more on that later.
Yes. 24th of November Raw. Ravishing Rick's music hits, obviously. As I say, they've perfected it now. His music hits and he introduces D-Generation X. And he walks down to the ring, but he's lost a lot of muscle mass in the last 7 days, it would seem. It's not Ravishing Rick, it's Harvey Whippleman. He
Handsome
introduces Handsome Harvey, as he's keyed, yeah. Thank you for that. He introduces D-Generation X. Shawn Michaels walks in the ring, just boots Harvey out of it and says, Lord knows that was a tough spot to fill. Sounds Ravishing Rick dead. Thanks for coming, mate. He says, pointedly, taking advantage of live airtime is what Shawn Michaels does. And that's kind of the last they'll reference the fact that Rude got one over on them. Shawn's very serious here, like, as opposed to what he would be normally. He says he's had his personal and professional differences with Bret. Says he never thought it would come down to this. He takes full and total responsibility for what happened at the Survivor Series. The world should know that Bret Hart is actually still under contract to the WWF until November 30th. Bret Bret deserved better. Vince McMahon and the WWF deserve better. And with God as my witness, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels have finally had contact with one another without the knowledge of the media, Vince, the internet, the underground dirt sheet writers. Bret and I have had an agreement tonight, and we will settle this once and for all. It can end with a handshake. It can end with a fight. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, face to face tonight in the ring. And Triple H and China look legitimately shocked. They, seemingly didn't know anything about this. And Shawn gives him to the top of the hour. And that's the big tease going into the second hour of Raw. Actually, before we get on to the payoff here, we knew it was coming, but this, let's wrap up Ravishing Rick, the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of that thing. What you make of all that all these years later?
That's been a mind-blowing one because, to me, my DX is this original run of DX. This is DX to me. I enjoy the Outlaws version, absolutely. I do not enjoy the Shawn and Hunter one later that becomes the definitive DX according to WWE in their own history. But this is my DX, and it's so sad that my child went, there's Shawn Michaels with his good friend Ravishing Rick, isn't it great? What a great group! And I've watched it back as an adult and gone, fucking hell, they couldn't make it more obvious they don't want him there. But to your point, I'm glad that at least near the end, and actually I think it was coming for a couple of weeks. You just noticed, instead of Shawn being me, China, and Hunter are gonna rain down on you, and Rick's just stood there I'm here too. Come on, what's going on? He's getting involved with the fun a bit more. He's got a banana, he's getting involved in Shawn mooning each other. And Shawn is going, me, Hunter, China, and Rick, we're going to take you down. He's starting to feel a bit more included and more part of it. It's still wrong in it that, again, as an adult, you're why do they need two henchmen / henchwomen for a faction that's only got two active wrestlers in it? Doesn't really work, does it? I kind of understand Shawn's arguments at the time, but yeah, it maybe didn't age as well as I thought it, as great as I thought it was in the time. But I'll always have a soft spot for old Ravishing Rick. It's a very odd use of the job, isn't it, considering what he was known for and, how charismatic and how much of a Shawn Michaels type character he was to be this stoic bodyguard like he was in ECW. But still got a little bit of a love for it.
Who wins the pot shot war? Is it Rick Rude for playing a blinder and appearing on both shows on the same night, or is it Shawn and Vince for just dressing Harvey up as him and then burying him 6 foot deep in the response? Is that a score draw?
I think it's still a 2-1 win. I think they get a consolation goal out of it. It's a nice little one, but it's hard to beat, isn't it? That and I think the icing on the cake is obviously they do the whole, the NWO welcome him in like they do with Bret Hart with the Canadian flags and all that stuff. But it is really well done. The icing that he walks out and he's fully shaved because obviously, he couldn't have grown a beard. So very clearly, Nitro's the more up to date one. It's galaxy brain stuff, isn't it? Really, it is actually quite clever. So yeah, you've got to give him the win there.
It's the stuff out of then. It's funny, isn't it? Because it's a 1995 Eric Bischoff play, but those in 1995, those plays were they were changing, they were causing earthquakes. He's just done fucking what? He's called out the super kick and he's read some results out. Are you joking? 2 years later, it's a bit of fun, really, isn't it? It's just a fun pot shot to get in rather than being this thing that is shocking the world.
Which, by the way, he's doing the complete expense of his locker room. Because Rude's got an active lawsuit, hasn't he, with WCW? He literally sued. Imagine suing Sting. He sued Sting. Lovely Steve Borden was the victim of Rick Rude lawsuits, and here comes Rick Rude just back into WCW. Oh, and by the way, he still can't wrestle. Doesn't really feel worth it. But it's a fun pot shot in the week, isn't it? It's good to get that 2-win victory on the night, even if it costs you the league title at the end of
it. Speaking of pot shots. We get to the top of the hour and Shawn gets his pyro and JR says this could be a monumental moment in our industry's history. Before Shawn gets to the point with Bret, Triple H takes the microphone again and he says, Slaughter, what are you going to do? You're going to threaten me with a Cobra Clutch? It's just shtick. That if you want to make a match between me and you at DX in your house, go for it. And then he kind of makes a reference. I think where they are must have been a military area because he says, you know what, I won't just shag Slaughter's wife, I'll shag all of your wives as well. That's the feud, by the way. Triple H would be a better shag than Sgt Slaughter. That's what they go with ultimately after all of this. Anyway, Shawn says, right, enough of that. Tonight the controversy comes to an end. Ladies and gentlemen, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. Bret the Hitman Hart. And out comes the little fella in the Bret Hart mask.
It's not the best moment, is it?
It's Triple H says, God damn it, stop, he's all gonna be dead. Bret, we always knew you were short on talent and short on charisma. The lawyers say that Degeneration X is sinking to new lows. Shawn Michaels, you've seen the footage, is holding mini Bret by the head as Bret's swinging the fist, and the Shawn just flicks the wrist, and the little Bret takes a bump, goes onto his back. Shawn locks on the sharpshooter. Little Bret is tapping for his life. Triple H is doing commentary on it. He puts the microphone to the little Bret, and you can see the Bret going, "Ring the bell, ring the bell." And Shawn wins. He celebrates winning the title. They slap a WCW sticker on his ass. Triple H puts the point of his shoe right up the poor fella's ass, kick him out the ring, and just say, and then one of them, I forget which one it is in my notes, send that piece of garbage where he belongs, and off little Bret tots to the WCW. Anyway, this is petty, but it isn't without a purpose right here, right now, because unable to take one more jab at Bret, one more jab at the family, out of nowhere, a wild Jim Neidhart appears on the stage, the bigger Rhino. And he says, and he's dressed like Jim Neidhart, and he says, I've been hiding behind these sunglasses for 15 years, but I can see things clearly now. Put the sunglasses up. Calls DX scum. He says he's going to kick DX's butt. Just say ass, mate. It's 1997. Shawn says, Jim, whoa, Jim, I know where you're going. I also know that Bret never gave you an opportunity quite like this, did he? He says, when I arrived, Jim, the Hart Foundation were more dominant than any team we had here. And Jim, you had the knowledge, you had the experience, you had the personality. Bret never, ever, ever had any of that. But how much of that lucrative contract that Bret's got now are you getting? Bret's at home. I don't know where Davey is. Jim cuts in. Davey's having minor knee surgery. And Shaw says, oh, phony knee surgery. I know that one well.
It's a great line. I don't know why Jim needed to clarify, but it's a great line. Yeah. Especially as Davey tweaked that knee from pulling Shane McMahon off Vince McMahon's back. But anyway, Yeah.
5-star reply, that one. He says, all right, where's Owen then? And Neidhart says, Owen's at home. He's absolutely distraught about what's happened to his brother. And Shawn says, right, all right, well, anyway, then you're all alone. But I'm not like them, Jim. I'm going to give you an opportunity. And he gives him the chance to join Degeneration X. Triple H in China, again, looking a little bit confused. But Shawn is ultimately saying, look, you're the toughest, you're the hardest, you're the last one standing, and I respect you. But the offer goes off the table by the time Raw goes off the air. So for the second time on this show, they've used a pretty big hook to keep people, on the hook, as it were. And we get the main event. It's weird, actually, because by 1997, most weeks, they would do star versus star. Bischoff innovated this in the Monday Night Wars with Hogan and defending the title on the early Nitros, the debut of Lex Luger and stuff. So it was quite odd in 1997 that they were doing jobber squashes. But nonetheless, Shawn Michaels defeats Vader easily. He's got a bandaged up arm, a bandaged eye for reasons that we'll explain later. And before the match begins, Shawn reveals that Neidhart has taken the deal. Boo! He has turned his back on his family and he has joined DX. Shawn, by the way, just to make it perfectly clear that Vader is an all-time J-Bron at this point, hasn't even put his proper gear on. He's got weird sort of taped fists with his hair tied back. Vader does his own pathetic little crotch chop. But then before he can even get anything going, Neidhart low bridges him. Vader falls out the ring. Neidhart and Triple H in China just put the boots to Vader. chuck him back in the ring. Vader goes for the Vader bomb, but Triple H just like China gets the referee for like a minute, and Triple H just throws hot coffee in Vader's one good eye. Shawn hits chin music to the back of his head, then to the front, and then just pins him piss easy. It's like, bye, Vader, see you later, mate. And then DX, the new DX, raise their arms together in the middle of the ring. Neidhart stood between Shawn and Hunter. He raises their arms. Meanwhile, China sneaks round the back. They give China the nod. Wham! Low blow, ball shot to Jim the Animal Neidhart. All they've done is use him up to beat Vader on this one night. Switching music to Neidhart. Jim Ross, oh no, it was Jim Cornette on commentary, goes, Michaels with a double cross. Shawn screams in Anvil's face, screams, who is the icon? Who is the showstopper? Who's the main event? He's like growling because he's just wrestled and everything. He's just like got the microphone. D-Generation X rules the wrestling world. And then as Raw's still on the air, he just screams it again. D-Generation X. Ah! Heat. To go back to the point I was trying to make before, I don't know what you... Like, this man looks unwell, doesn't he? Yeah. Like, we cannot pretend that this last month has been like a walk in the park for this dangerously drug-addled addict guy with his life on the edge. He's not in a good place here, is he? For all the bollocks and the mini Bret and the farting about and the locker room hates him and all of that, you believe the stuff that when he's out there, he's just about keeping it together, because he's barely keeping it together here.
Yeah. And it's not just him either, is it? Like, look, Jim Neidhart, like, you see it in his eyes, like, he is not in a good place there. Like, and it's tough to be like the biggest loser in a segment that's also got Vader in it, but Jim manages it because he's in a pretty desperate state himself. But it kind of is it is 1997 the segment, isn't it? Because Shawn is just, he's got mad with power too. Like, get away with this stuff, because what are they going to do? It's not, I guess they've got Steve round the corner, but outside of that, there aren't many options. You want a top heel? Well, it's fucking me. And he literally is just like, I mean, this whole segment and the one I'm sure you're going to get into that follows is just, it's pure power play stuff, isn't it? Like, it is pretty, like, whatever we think about the Montreal Screwjob and all that, it's pretty embarrassing that, like, Neidhart is even willing to do this. Maybe sad too that he's desperate enough to want to do this, but like, when it got laid out to him, like, this is what we're going to do. And also Shawn and Hunter are going to get a few extra licks in, and they're going to, like you say, at the end of it, go to the top rope and celebrate and proper rub it in. Like, you might have had the dignity to just say, nah, lads. Even after, like, the original segment where they give him till 11 o'clock, which, like you say, is a good hook. I think if I was Jim Neidhart, I'd come back through the curtain and gone, nah, that's enough, Vince. I'm just not going to be back by 11. That's the end of the story. I'm done. Like, you got to have a low level of self-esteem to be willing to do any of this, but I guess that could apply to more than one man here.
Yeah, needed to pay off for this one last night, I guess, realising that his family didn't have any stroke anymore, perhaps. It's funny, like the story of the Undertaker taping his fist at WrestleMania is just it's true, I guess. He says it and enough people back it up, but it's dead man bollocks. Like, what's he actually going to do? He's going to physically assault Shawn Michaels. Like, that end of the story is very silly. But to watch this Shawn Michaels, this man here is a guy that would say no to jobbing to Steve Austin on the day of WrestleMania, isn't he? This man here is like the guy that would say, actually, how about fuck yourself? And then there is that thing of like, what are we gonna do? Like, Austin's got, like, do we have a Boston screw job? Is that like the necessary evil, like, again? Because it's like,
fix the universe. There you go, sorted. Yeah. You didn't need one screw job, mate. You needed two. That was the answer. It was right in front of us. Sorted.
We got there. We got
like there. 2 housekeeping. Sorted. That's what you need. You need to. Solves all problems.
I was going to say, speaking of 2 housekeepings and getting there, I promise you, if you've listened this far, thank you so much, because we are nearly at the end. We've arrived somehow at the go-home show for D-Generation X in your house. Shawn mocks Jim Neidhart, obviously, for last week. Makes some crude remarks while they're all sat on the stage, sucking on lollipops like they do not give a shit about anything. He says, they can play anyone for suckers. Do you get it? And then he throws the microphone over to Triple H, somewhat infamous here, because he goes, tell him try. And it's the one time he tried try as a nickname for Triple H, and Jim Ross just sneers at it on mic. Triple H says, backstage, they call Jim Neidhart the White Rhino, presumably because he's stupid as well. He says he's going to beat him up later on in the show. They've got a match book later on Raw. And then he gets on to Sgt Slaughter. He says, Slaughter, I'm hearing you want a boot camp match. That's fine by him. And he just basically reiterates the fact that he's going to beat him at DX in your house and then he's going to shag his wife. It's just dick puns and army jokes, isn't it, basically? But this is the formal announcement that it's a boot camp match. Shawn then notes he's sat there in a wheelchair. He says he's got to fight Ken Shamrock at DX in your house, and as a result, he's been doing ankle workouts. The mention of Shamrock's name gets a pop, but Shawn says, look, you can cheer him all you want, but my pain tolerance that I've got working out is going to stop the ankle lock even working. And to illustrate the pain, he wants Hunter and China to twist the boot. So, like, he sat in this wheelchair and Shawn twists it. And, he's not feeling any pain. Hunter and China get in there and they're twisting it. And he's like, oh, God, you can go a bit further if you want. Go a little bit further. And Shawn's like, Triple H like, you sure? I don't want to break your ankle. And Shawn's like, go for it. And Triple H turns the shoe. And suddenly it just starts going round and round and round and round as the fact that it's a fake foot is revealed. They all piss themselves. And Shawn goes, once again, DX shows why they're a leg up on the competition. Suck it. Sucks his lollipop and they just fuck about on the stage.
All for the bit in it, because I did watch this forgetting that was where it was going. Why is Shawn in a wheelchair? Are we doing a knee injury gag? Like, what are we doing? I like the literally, don't worry, we haven't missed anything, folks. It's not that. And it uses the China excuse, as you say there. But honestly, even now though, watching it today, I was looking at it going, that's quite a good prosthetic. That really, it looks good. Like, I guess it just makes his legs look longer. But Shawn's a short guy anyway, so sat down. Yeah. You can't really tell. It's up there with the Kevin Nash one with the broken leg where he rips off the fucking towel and he does a little run in. Like, it's a bit like that, but it made me laugh today, so that's enough.
I enjoyed that. So yeah, anyway, we go to the Raw main event of Triple H versus the Anvil, which comes to an end when Triple H hits Jim the Anvil Neidhart in the back with a chair. Not for a DQ, but just for an easy 1, 2, 3. It's a 3-on-1 beatdown of Jim the Anvil Neidhart. There's a Hart family member that'll happily respect the time on the tradition. Like, Neidhart, do whatever you need. He gets a pedigree on the chair. They sprayed WCW on his back. And the commentators are like, oh, that's original. But somewhat unexpectedly, the Anvil gets up and he fires back. So he's like punching away. He's like, clearly the indignity of having WCW sprayed on his back is enough to power any man. No one wants to suffer that fate. So like he starts firing back. And as a result, DX gets some handcuffs and they try and handcuff him to the ropes to stop it. Jim Ross, like, really, really good line here that kind of puts across just how awful DX is starting to get his heels. He's like, come on, something's got to change here. Like, begging for help, basically. And out comes Sgt Slaughter. Now, he can't do too much, and because obviously Neidhart is handcuffed, he can't exactly help, as DX then go to 3-on-1 on Slaughter. But here comes Ken Shamrock, who proper kicks ass. He immediately goes for Triple H, belly-to-belly suplex on him just to get rid of him for a second and leave him with Slaughter. Then he counters Shawn Michaels, puts him in the ankle lock. He's got a lolly in his mouth and he's completely taking the piss out of the process, but he is at least tapping out to the ankle lock one last time, like wildly flailing while the lolly's still in his mouth. All the while, Slaughter's managed to get the Cobra clutch on Triple H, and Anvil, while handcuffed, has got China tapped in a waist lock as, like, finally, on the go-home angle for the go-home Raw, these baby faces, who, let's be fair, can't really lay a glove on DX, for one night a week, pretend like maybe they stand a chance.
What a collection of baby faces, but still, nonetheless, the baby faces, and Ken Shamrock's the biggest winner of the lot, but it's a decent go-home angle for a baby. It doesn't feel that significant, at least in the the world title regards, and definitely not in the Sarge and Triple H regards. But yeah, I mean, my biggest takeaway was obviously my memory of it was that was one Neidhart segment, and the first one ended with the spray paint, so I was waiting for it. Like you say there, when it went off air with Shawn ranting and raving, like I was waiting for it. It didn't happen. And I was like, oh, right, there's the second one, there's this match, and there's all of that there as well. Don't you think if you were Eric Bischoff, though, I know we really wanted Bret, but wouldn't you just tell, you know what, Jim, change that mind, mate? Like, I think we knew you were a loser. We did know that when we agreed to bring you in. But you're just too much of a loser. Like, I feel like that would be my take coming off this segment. Like, I wouldn't take him. WCW spray painted on his back. Nah, mate, you're all right.
Yeah. It's like, it's, again, I think we touched upon it loads before the Survivor Series, and the same is kind of true. I'll say again, we're going to do a second part of this housekeeping where we build the rest of the DX in your house card, and there is indeed build to everything because it is an extremely busy time. It's remarkable that anyone had any chance to get anything done in this era for the Fed while Bret and Shawn were chewing so much of the scenery and DX were getting over. Well, that's really what this is, isn't it? DX are getting over. They're getting themselves over. And I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here, but like they're selling a pay-per-view called Degeneration X. In terms of copying the NWO formula, they've reached sold out. And they basically make the same mistake that WCW did by even coming up with the idea in the first place. But
Yeah.
I guess this is how you build their pay-per-view, right? It's ugly, it's chaotic, it's unnecessarily vile and bilious and nasty. And the idea is tune in Sunday because they've got the keys to their own pay-per-view. What's that going to be like? That's like, it's a slightly more effective sales pitch than the Survivor Series, isn't it?
Yeah, and a more effective sales pitch than the NWO shows. Like at this time, I think WCW are trying to make Nitro, NWO Nitro, or at least there's talk of doing that, or a Thursday show. And the problem was every time they did that, it was shit money. But you didn't know that in the selling of it. It sounded cool. The NWO takeover Nitro, that sounds great. They're well cooler than Kevin Sullivan and lads. Let's go. Kind of the same deal here with DX, isn't it? Maybe it's, like I say, when we get to it on the second bar, more of a rounded out show. But yeah, you're selling the idea, really, aren't you, rather than the reality that is to come.
Yeah. And that is it. That has at least led us to Shawn Michaels versus Ken Shamrock for the WWF title and Triple H versus Sgt Slaughter in a boot camp. There is, of course, much more on the In Your House card and much more going on in the World Wrestling Federation between October and December 1997. Thankfully, we will get to that on a second edition of Housekeeping, the very special one. Montreal is now past tense. It is in the rearview mirror. I hope that you've been able to stick with us this long. Thank you for putting up with the ISIS coldest takes on the biggest event in wrestling from 30 years ago. Let us know, to Benno's point, let us know in the comments anything you might have done or anything we've not thought about in our dealings with these things in this well-trodden path. But thank you for joining us on that path all the same today. If you want to get involved in the podcast even further, you can do so by leaving us a 5-star review. We've got a very special one on the next edition of Housekeeping that ties to this specific time in WWF, which will cleanse us. That's a great way of putting it, which we look forward to going through. But if you want to get a match reviewed or anything for that matter reviewed that doesn't necessarily have to exist within this new generation / Attitude Era timeline that we're doing, you can do so simply by leaving us a 5-star review. Put your name in there, put a comment in there requesting what match you would like us to take a look at. Leave that 5-star review. Let us gimmick those charts. Let's stay above the dead man in the podcast charts. And down the line, we will get to a review on a future edition of Housekeeping, admittedly, when there is a little bit less Montreal Screwjob to discuss. So yeah, one of them is coming again on the next edition of Housekeeping, a special edition, just to be clear. We will still be reviewing DX in 2 episodes' time, but the next edition will be Housekeeping Part 2.
Absolutely. And yeah, good to slay some, I don't know, sacred cows. Are these sacred cows anymore? Slay some demons. I mean, I think the good news is, Michael, that we've gotten Montreal out the way, we've gotten the Curtain Call out the way, even Austin 316, the Hogan turn, all out the way. Just got the invasion to come, mate, at some point if we do go that far, one day. Who knows? Yeah. Future versions of Benno and Hamflett in a few years might find themselves at a season one day, but outside of that, I think we've gone past the big ones.
Not time completely wasted for me as we record this, because I thought, having seen the Survivor Series so many times, I actually thought for the first time ever I would watch it with the French commentary on. And it was quite helpful because I thought it gave me like a bit of a European flavour, which I think might be quite useful next season. How are the fucking lads? So now I've slotted that one in. It wasn't all a complete waste of time.
Congratulations, mate.
I'm glad we did it, Benno. Now we've actually gotten through it. I'm glad we did it. I don't think it's as good as 1996's version of this podcast. I think even when the business are in the bin, I'd rather watch Jim Ross cut work shoot promos than Shawn and Bret at each other.
That's it. Well, the Bret part of the history that we've been going through is gone. Still a bit of Shawn to go, though, at least. But yeah, will he be on his best behavior? You'll find out in 2 episodes' time.
I can't wait, man. If you're not completely sick of me, because I certainly am at this point, you can listen to my regular output at What Culture Wrestling. We do daily wrestling podcasts covering Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, NXT reviews, previews, as well as all the pay-per-views and premium live events. By the time this goes out, we'll have all the run-in to Clash in Italy, as well as review stuff to come. If that doesn't date too much, there's always all the other coverage of all the stuff. Wrestling, as we've kind of proven here, really, has entered a period where it never, ever, ever stops. And we try not to as well. The content never sleeps at whatculture.com.
Definitely, and as you said, because we're a little bit more up to date now, I can apologise for plugging a quiz that didn't end up happening on the Grapple Patreon, but I can plug it again as it is coming up in June. We will be doing it then, so that is coming. But obviously, we've got a episode of Raw Roulette out this very weekend, same weekend as you'll be listening to this, where we'll be picking a random episode of Monday Night Raw from 1994. If you enjoy such things, patreon.com/grapple, and you'll get all of our other shows, including a banger of a show we did last week on Lucha Underground, the season 1 finale that I very much enjoyed recording as well. But and you know, link to this too. We kind of half mentioned it. We did the Beyond the Map review as well. So there you go. There's another Sacred Cow sorted from 1987. So check that out too.
And if anyone's listening to this 10 years from now, hamfletx@gmail.com. I'll have changed my mind on what I think about the Montreal Screwjob, so you can email me and ask me what I think about it then.
At Benson Richard, it should be the same over on Twitter and Instagram, but I'll probably deactivate it by then. Sorry.
And I guess, Benno, with everything finally wrapped up on the Montreal Screwjob, I can at long last say, suck it for the house.